What up, Doe? One Pride. This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where 6 random guys from around the British Isles get together to talk about anything and everything Detroit Lions. My apologies for the slight technical issue there to start with. I don't know how to use Zoom properly, but we're there, we're here to talk Detroit Lions, and we are here for episode 114. If you love someone, set them free. Agency. That one is not mine. But hey, there we go. Moving on. My name is Anthony Fitzpatrick, and I am joined this evening by my co-hosts Ryan McCluskey and Matthew Turner. How are we getting on this week, guys?
Yep, all good, thank you very much. I got my hopes up today. I don't know why. I was silly. It was foolish. And now I'm left deflated.
Oh, it could have been, couldn't it? But never mind. It's been a challenging day, so I'm very glad that you're taking the lead, Ant, if I'm honest. But I'm glad to have the distraction of talking about Lions football.
Yes, absolutely. And if any of you are wondering why I'm doing the hosting here today, Matt, as you probably well know, if you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, has just moved house. And him getting internet there is like, the Lions getting to a playoff game at this moment. It's just not happening. Hopefully, in the very near future, he's going to have something there. But just for now, his internet is struggling just a little bit. But you've got me here. We're all still here. We're all good to go. So we'll crack on with this one. And as Ryan was just mentioning then, we're going to dive down into some news before looking at free agency on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions this year. And we kick it off with today. Unfortunately, there was the reveal for the NFL UK slate schedule of games for this upcoming year. We were hoping that the Detroit Lions might be able to get a game this year and that all of you One Pride could come over here and meet us charming fellows at ROTL UK and we could all go and watch a game together, but unfortunately that is not the case. The schedule has revealed that it will be the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New Orleans Saints and the Green Bay I can't even say their last name there, but yeah, those three teams are the announced home teams for this year, and unfortunately in the Lions case we're playing Jacksonville in Detroit, so it's not them. We're not playing New Orleans, and because of a new raft of measures passed last year, all the abroad games now are going to be AFC versus NFC only, so we can't get a fixture against Green Bay, which is a darned shame there. Yeah, a blow for us there wanting to see them this year, guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all hoping for it, weren't we? And there's this little rumor here or there we've been hearing from some of our listeners on our Discord channel that we might be able to get press passes whenever the Lions come as the preeminent Lions kind of outlet locally. So the fact that they didn't come means we have to wait another 2 years for it to be a possibility. I can't wait to get access to some of these players, especially Dan Campbell. I want the Lions to come to London when Dan Campbell was still the coach. And I am fearful for 4 years' time, so I'm pinning my hopes to 2 years from now that he's going to be coming.
Well, I'm just thinking about it. Hopefully this time in 2 years, you say about press passes, hopefully then we will just be the ultimate Lions juggernaut over here when it comes to their sports media, and it might put us in with a better chance of getting passes then, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. It's just a shame, isn't it? Like I say, I think a lot of people, especially after that rumoured cancelled game in 2020, some people thought, well, Lions kind of had first dibs, it's only fair. So, but it isn't to be. And with the new AFC NFC rule, you're not even going to get a good matchup. Like, you can't even have the Rams and the Packers, which would have been really good. So I don't know who they're going to get. I've not even looked who their AFC matchups are, but it's just a shame, really.
It is. We're going to have to endure an invasion of the cheese over this side of the UK, but as I said on Twitter earlier, they, are probably in the right stadium for them. Tottenham, as you know, they love to fold when the big occasion comes calling, and, the Packers are the perfect team to personify that there for them. But, we'll see as and when it comes to them. Just a big shout out to everyone who is joining us on Twitch and YouTube. We appreciate you all. As always, Det Fanman's in there. Dan McGuinness is in there. Det Fanman says the Lions aren't going to London. We're going to Munich, right? Unfortunately, nothing this year. It's the Bucks in Germany, it's the Cardinals in Mexico, and unfortunately again because of that whole crossover issue with both them two being NFC teams, we can't face either of them. So if we can't have them, nobody can. That's all I'm going to say on that one there. But we may not have got an international game this year, but we may have got a nice consolation prize. So the news also dropped today, courtesy of Mark Murphy, who is the CEO/president of the Green Bay Packers. They are one of the 3 finalists for the 2024 NFL Draft. That Green Bay, that is. And they are facing up competition against Washington and our very own Detroit. That result is expected in late March. But I mean, the NFL Draft is a huge occasion to be able to get your hands on. And I mean, what a win that would be if we could secure the draft in 2024, potentially, when we're looking at players to help us get towards that Super Bowl that we're so near. What do you guys think about that one? That could be a big boon for Detroit if they're able to snatch the draft from Washington and Green Bay.
It don't bother me personally. It's not something that I know. It's great for the city. I know it would mean a lot to Detroit, like I say, because it's a big influx of tourism and it's going to put the spectacle on it, and all eyes will be on us. Like I say, we don't know where we'll be in that draft, but we could be making some just key additions on a potential possible playoff run. So it's great for the whole as a city, and it's great for the franchise itself. So it'd be nice to get one over on someone as early as March.
I mean, I know that's something that they've been working on for a long, long time. So the fact that they have been shortlisted as a finalist is good news. Up against one big city, 2 historic teams and 2 big cities. So, Green Bay isn't a big city, but as a footballing icon, it's up there, isn't it? So it's going to be a tall order to actually get it. But if it happens, I think we all need some big trip out there all together, rent a condo or something for a week and just have a big party over there. I think it'd be great.
Oh, absolutely.
Surely Wisconsin is an even less attractive city than Detroit, though. Like, come on, I don't know much about it, but it looks like hell on earth frozen over. Like, it looks shit. It's got to be us or Washington, surely.
I mean, I love the cold. I travel up into the Arctic Circle most years on holiday, and I will quite happily go where the cold is, but not there. That is a step too far. I'm not going to go to Lambeau and, promote the draft. But I think it would be wonderful, and I agree with Matt. I think we should really take a trip out there if the draft happens, really get in and amongst it, because, I mean, hell, it's one of the biggest spectacles you'll get there, and it would be quite fun. So, here's hoping the Lions do get the call for that. And as I say, that result is expected roughly around the end of March. So, got about a month's time, we'll find out whether that's going to happen or not. Plenty of time for us to plan our little jolly over there. We'd have 2 years to prep for that. But anyhow, moving on with the news, a little bit of squad news. I thought we'd have seen a lot more by now, but they're really taking their time with roster development this year. So this came out probably a couple of days after we did our last pod, so it might be slightly old news now. But linebacker Josh Woods, he has been signed on for another year. We poached him off the Bears practice squad last season. Played in 12 games overall, started 1, which I believe was that week at Denver when we had no players available at all. Contributed on both special teams and defense. His contract is going to come up to a $1.2 million base salary, $250K as a signing bonus, and there's another $100,000 available for a per game roster bonus. So his cap hit is just about over $1.5 million. So nothing too offensive there. But what do you think with this one, guys? Do you think this one has been well earned for the amount of money we're spending, or could that have gone elsewhere?
Yeah, I'd say it's certainly a position of need, because when you look at the whole, there's going to be maybe a lot of turnover at backer. You've got Anzalone, we've got likes of Sean Dion Hamilton that was on IR, you've got Pittman. Like I said, there's a lot of questions right now about inside linebacker, so to bring one back on a fairly cheap deal who showed flashes in games, I think he's still young as well, he's got a lot of youth on his side, so it's cost us pocket change. So if we can get him mixed into rotation again, hopefully he can have a bigger role in year 2. It certainly can't hurt. Like I say, there's going to be a new coach coming in as well for the linebackers, so it's good to see some bodies staying around that know the system as well.
I'm really happy that he's coming back. I mean, at the end of the day, he was picked up mid-season when we were in kind of desperation mode. The amount of money means that he's certainly not safe from being cut if he's not actually, cutting the mustard. But at the end of the day, he got given the green dot for a couple of games because he was the guy trusted after a few weeks of being here. And I think the way that this coaching staff has worked, you don't get that on anything other than merit. So, think what he can do with a full off season under his belt. I mean, the guy could really be a big performer for us next season.
I mean, I guess if you're looking at it one way, could this be sort of in the region of sort of the Jalen Reeves Maben type gamble we took last year? Obviously, special teams all his career, they've bought him in, they've developed him to the point now where you could say he's a bona fide starter. Do you see maybe Woods taking the same route as JRM did?
It wouldn't surprise me to see him make that leap. For me, this is another indication that Anzalone is not coming back, and that Instagram post was a final goodbye. I think we're going to go younger, we're going to go hungrier, and also go down the special teams route where they offer on both sides of the ball, where Alex wasn't a huge contributor. So there's a role there if someone wants it, someone that can potentially call plays and be an every down backer. So as you say, it's not too expensive there. If he doesn't succeed, you can't just get rid of him. Like, so we saw they're not afraid to pay someone $1-2 million and get rid of them. We saw that with Perryman. So he's by no means safe whatsoever, but it's another building block, and it maintains that youth core as well. I believe at like 24.6, we were the youngest roster in the NFL last year. This guy's only like 27, so he doesn't even bring that average up either. So it's going to be another solid core to work with.
I mean, yeah. I mean, do you think this impacts the draft strategy? Maybe you've said there. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of young linebackers there, so you would maybe think they take some out the market for a late developmental linebacker, and that they're going to go higher with it, or is that just reading a bit too much? They say we've got a lot of good young guys in there now. It seems like just now you need the starters or the really high prospect guys to now come in and finish the unit off.
Oh, I like this linebacker class. I don't think it changes a right lot. If someone like Devin Lloyd falls, you still pull that trigger without a doubt, even with who's already here or who you think bringing back. I hope it doesn't change anyone's mind at all, because there's some game-changing talent coming up in the next year or two.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think it moves the needle at all. At worst, at that sort of price, you can be LB4 or LB5. That's absolutely fine at that sort of price point. So, that's fine. But at the same time, if you don't pick up someone at linebacker, then, at least there are bodies in that position. But as Ryan said, if Lloyd falls, if Dean falls to 32, 34, which is unlikely, but, you never know. The number of times I've seen us mocked with Muma at 34 is increasing by the day. And in fact, I'm not even sure whether we'll be able to get him at that point, but we'll see. It's all to come, but no, I don't think it moves the needle either way.
No, that's fair. I mean, I was specifically thinking about the later rounds. I'm thinking in terms of taking developmental guys. Obviously, we need someone at top, but for me, I don't know if this just moves the needle. Sort of past round 3 now, I don't think I'd expect to see a linebacker. I think we've got enough of those guys here already, but we'll see. Draft season is approaching. Detfan Man says in the comments, so we can't travel this year. At least we will be featured on Hard Knocks finally, right? Well, is that is the dream? I think we'd love to see a Hard Knocks on there with Campbell and the Lions, but also we wouldn't at the same time. Don't want the Hard Knocks cameras snooping around everywhere. But I guess, would you guys be in favour of seeing them on Hard Knocks?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think it'd be any distraction at all. People have still got relatively realistic expectations this year. I don't see Hard Knocks throwing anything off or derailing our season. Some people like the privacy, don't like it as a distraction. I think Dan Campbell would embrace it. I think there's only, 3 teams eligible, so we've got a really good chance this year. And I think they'll be interested in this nice plethora of coaches. So we've certainly got a great chance of being on it this year.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be us. I think the national attention in Dan Campbell means that, you have a look at the options. We're the most attractive team out there, and they tend to just pick the most attractive team available. Unless someone volunteers, I think it will be the Lions, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I agreed. It should be fun to see a little bit behind the scenes there. We do love to see it all. And speaking of, I think they've just released a new episode of Inside the Den as well, which I know that we are all going to take a look at very shortly. Well, as soon as this episode is over, we're gonna take a look at Inside the Den. That should be interesting. All to do with Senior Bowl week there. They're going to have a lot of good tidbits in there. Just to round out sort of the bits of the news I've got here. USA Football, the sports national governing body and a member of the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, have announced that Sheila Ford Hemp, our principal owner and chair of our Detroit Lions, she's going to be named on the board of directors there. So, she's soon picking up a lot of responsibilities in terms of the football world now, but, you know, considering the job she's doing here, I think these accolades she's getting, they're worth it.
I'd say she's one of the... So as you look at her age and how many women there are in the higher positions of executive and GMs, she's certainly one of the female pioneers of the NFL world, I'd say. She's been around a very long time, flown the flag as, say, owner, high respected board. So it's good to see them getting more representation and bringing what I imagine is more diversity on board. I'd say, because she's a high-powered woman in the footballing world. Even if people have differing opinions on that, you can't disparage what she's done and the legacy she's going to leave behind.
Yeah, it's great news, isn't it? So it is recognition of how far she's come. I think it's recognition of the legacy that's kind of come before her and also what she could be in her tenure. So I think that's a really, really good thing. Just a quick note from Dan in the Twitch. He said that we're on speaker view in Zoom, and could we change to gallery just so we can see everyone instead of just seeing one person? So that's in the top right of Zoom, and if you click on view,
speaking
and just
gallery, there we
go. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers for letting us know that. We're still sorting out these little bits at the moment, so there we go. Right, so that's pretty much it for the news this week. But before we start our chatter about free agency and the defense, or something that happened in the Roar of the Lions world this week. Obviously, we've got a pretty extensive sort of field out there now. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but if you want to join our Discord chat, just let us know about it. There is a lot of chatter going off on there, a lot of agreements and disagreements, especially about the draft coming here, there, and everywhere now. But you can also find all our latest pieces on our website, roarofthelions.co.uk, and our very own Matthew Turner here released a piece not so long ago which set off a stir, let's say, didn't it, Matt? The issue of trading Jared Goff here in the summer set off a whole cascade of chatter about quarterbacks and the quarterback scene here. Explain yourself a bit more on that one.
I mean, it didn't quite go viral, but it got some attention, a few hundred likes and a few hundred comments here. It split the fan base pretty evenly, which I guess is kind of what I was aiming for, because I don't want it to be entirely clickbait stuff, which a few people accuse me of. But I genuinely think, like, in a perfect world, that it's something I would do. Now, I think it's going to be hard to do. It wasn't about how hard or easy or whatever. In a perfect world, what do you want to do with the Lions? And my ultimate goal is to get the Lions to a Super Bowl. Like, a division win would be nice, but actually, those two aims are not necessarily the same. A division win is a hell of a lot easier to achieve than a Super Bowl win. And you can take a less good move to win now, i.e. get a division title, which actually maybe doesn't move the needle in terms of Super Bowls. So if you have a look at some of the teams out there at the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to compete with those teams next season. I think the gap is just a little bit too far. And if you have a look at Goff's contract, once you get past that point, that's when it becomes very cuttable. So we've got a team next year that probably can't win the Super Bowl unless something insane happens. Very low chance. And you have a horrible contract on a quarterback, 7th highest paid player in the NFL, or quarterback in the NFL, in Jared Goff. It's a monumental waste of money if the rest of the roster isn't ready yet. Unfortunately, we can't cut him, Now, I really like Jared Goff, and I want to put this front and centre as well. I like Jared Goff. He's a really good man. You have a look at some of the humanitarian stuff he's done in the area of Michigan since he's come in, especially in Detroit. You have a look at the way he's conducted himself. I really like that too. You have a look at his play down the stretch. He got massively better, and I do highlight this in the article. Those final 4 or 5 games is night and day from the first 9 games that he played. So he's played well, and I like him. But his contract's too rich. We can't cut him. That leaves trading him. Now, people have come to me and said, can't trade him. No one's going to trade for that contract. Well, the thing is, if we trade him, we save about half the money, and the acquiring team have to pay the other half, at which point after that, his contract is cuttable if he doesn't cut the mustard for the other team. So the contract is actually quite attractive for a quarterback in year 1 for an acquiring team. And then, if they want to move on, they can pretty much do that pretty cheaply. So, for an acquiring team, it's not an awful contract to acquire, especially when, in free agency, the options aren't good. In the draft, the options are apparently not that great. And all of the trade acquisitions are out there are really, really steep prices. So Goff is the cheapest quarterback to acquire at a certain quality level, and it's actually not that much of a financial commitment for a team to take on. And if you have a look at his play down the stretch, that's only going to enhance that trade value. So for us, he's a luxury that we can't afford. He's a good player. He's too good to bridge, but he's not good enough for our team to win. We need to get a bridge who's actually going to bridge and not take up too much of our funds, so that in 2023, when we really might actually contribute, we've got even more money to funnel into that cause. So I know that's a bit of a long-winded way of putting it, but it's the least worst option to me, and I think it's more realistic than people think, because there's very few options for quarterback-needy teams this offseason. If you can't afford a Rodgers, if you can't afford a Wilson, if you can't afford a Deshaun Watson if he becomes available because of his legal issues, which I don't think he will, but all of these guys are taking multiple first-round picks. Goff might be available for a 4th-round pick. Now, that sounds awful for the Lions in 2022, and it is. But if the Lions' ceiling next year is 8 and 9, which it may very well be, why are we paying the guy $30 million this year and then $10 million to cut him in the off-season? That's $40 million over 2 years that we can just avoid. So I think it's something that we should explore. All I was saying is it should be on the table. What do you guys make of it?
Well, I mean, the thing for me is if you are going to trade him, I guess during the off-season, obviously you've got to make a decision pre-draft, do you not? Really, because you're going to need a guy to come in, and you're going to need a guy here, unless you can immediately think of another guy who's on the market who might be better or give you more value for money. This is going to have to be a very premeditated move.
Yeah, so the thing that's actually moving the needle is he has a roster bonus due to him in the middle of March, so he needs to go by then.
And see, there's a very convoluted market this year, because obviously you've got Carson Wentz, who's going to be moving. You know, you don't know where he's going. There might be Russell Wilson, there might be Aaron Rodgers, there'll definitely be Jimmy Garoppolo. It seems a very convoluted market, and it's one you could easily lose out on if you fire too quick or you wait too long. I mean, it's a tough one. I don't know, but I mean, we got reaction all across the board from that. I remember I was watching Twitter very amusingly that day when you put that up. But I mean, you know, Emmanuel, who's our favourite Italian lister on here, he goes, who in his right mind would offer something for that dumpster of a contract? Now, I know you've sort of put that on a little bit there, but I mean, there was such a varied degree of opinion across the board. I mean, Roderick Burrell put, I don't agree, Goff is arguably the second best quarterback the Lions have had in the Super Bowl era, and you know, he says he might possibly be the best. Statistically, every year of his first 6 years has been better than every year of Stafford's first 6 years. He's going side by side with the comparisons that we've made there. Like it or not,
apples and apples, then that's fine. But this is apples and oranges. Sorry, not fair comparison at all.
Hey, hang on. I'm just reading the feedback that we got here. Jason Kynes on there. He put, I'll keep Goff this year if there's a value high upside free agent, or if you can get a good late rounder in the draft. that's fine, but he'd rather build another year, possibly bring in a young guy to look there behind him. I know Ash was going on about Sam Howell and whether you were down on him, but I know you've sorted that one out. Dan said I'd like to trade Goff the following year after he improves further. He says let's get Malik Willis and get him settled and learning Ben Johnson's scheme. I can think of a pod guy who's been preaching that very same thing on there. I think he's been listening to pod quite a lot. Matthew Price said I get the thought of trading Goff, but who pays the value for Goff when trading him? Who's available that's better via free agency, trade or draft? And 3 mentions the lack of tools he's had round him. That does impact what he's going to do there. And there's a few more along that line. Dustin says it could be an option after this year, but why not put a team around him and give him a shot first? Anthony Zito says roughly the same thing. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows what to do with him, do they, in the grand scheme of things?
No, and they all make fair points now. Like I say, if you were to give him a solid tight end 2 option, if Hockenson does stay healthy, if you did take someone like Treylon Burks, you'd expect that if he plays like the latter half of last season, that he could look pretty good. But that's a big if, innit? Which Jared Goff do you see coming out the blocks? Do you see the guy that's in his shell, a bit reserved, is a bit slow and making those prone to mistakes before he gets hot? Or do you see the guy that finished last season looking like he was gashing through teams when possible? And if you do trade him, it is the case of what is the backup plan? Like say we've got Blau, we've got Boyle, probably both on their way out. Like say do you throw a rookie in straight away, or do you look for? I was seeing Colt McCoy's name mentioned again. Do you look at a Mariota for a year? But they're not cheap options, are they? Like say there's guys out there. There's Mike Glennons. They're what you'd call a bridge quarterback, where the play won't be too great, but the cost won't be too high. But do people want to suffer through that for a year? Because it could be pretty damn ugly if you bring some of those guys in. So I'd be very much open to trading him if we've got a plan. I saw one of the pods on Twitter say, would you restructure him to get $17 million, but then tie yourself to him to 2 or 3 more years? I almost vomited in my mouth. Like, that was a grim, that was painful to read. Like, there was people saying yes, and I was just like, oh, I'll say a prayer for you before bed.
I mean, for me,
he is not worth an extra $16.7 million for 3 more years of Goff. What good is that free agency money? What are we going to do with it? What could we possibly do with it?
No, agreed. And I think always the wonderful, well, not the wonderful, but the most practical thing about the way we got Goff here is we specifically got him on terms where we can cut him for next to nothing after 2 years. So that's enough time for an experiment. Restructuring and going 3-4 years down the line is verging on you're really chucking all your eggs in one basket, and I don't think that's a great idea at all. I think you have to stick with the idea that you've maybe got 1 more year of him as a prove-it thing. 1 year to show that we might restructure you into the future this time next year if need be, and if not, then you'll go elsewhere. But I know we've talked trades and that, and I know me and Ryan had this asked of us on the college podcast, but we're here with you now, as well, Matt. And Det Fan Man's been on about this a little bit, but he's been on about the hypothetical Washington trade that they put out there. Obviously, they'd be up to and including Chase Young trading away to try and find themselves a quarterback. And the hypothetical scenario that was doing the rounds, I know especially amongst a lot of Lions media, was Jared Goff and the number 2 pick for Chase Young and the number 11 pick. Would you make that trade? I know me and Ryan vehemently said no to number 2, maybe to 32. Are you any different, Matt, or
yeah?
Are you the same?
I'm very different. I am jumping all over that. That is peak trade level for me. Because if you take the 2 component parts of that trade, you've got the number 2 overall pick for Chase Young. Chase Young, now a proven commodity of the NFL. Yes, he's had a little bit of injury history, not unlike some of the guys coming into this draft that we might pick at number 2. Chase Young is worth more than a first-round pick with what he has produced so far. So I think number 2 for Young is a great trade. Take that bit together. Now we have Jared Goff being traded for the number 11 pick in the draft. I just said that I'd take a 4th round pick for him. You're giving me 11? Both of those bits on their own are way above the value that we should expect from a trade. Like, I am rushing in to get that trade. That's an insanely valuable thing for us. And at number 11, we can draft a quarterback. We can draft a really, really good edge player. We could draft Karl Aftis at 11, maybe, or we could draft Jermaine Johnson or any of the other edge guys. We could get a CB1. There's so much we could do with number 11 overall. You know, it doesn't have to be in those top ones. Kyle Hamilton could slip to 11. I know we've been saying we should take him at 2, and we're allowed to think that. But the common wisdom with general managers out there is safety isn't worth anything. And we saw that when Merrick dropped out of the 1st round last year. Safeties don't go high anymore. And however much we think Hamilton may be worth that, Hamilton could slip to 11. And we might be able to take him there. So I think it keeps our options open. We could get a bridge quarterback for free agency. We could go and get Mariota for $5 million a year or whatever he wants. Bridge for a year. And then we've got Chase Young, that number 11 pick, whoever that turns out to be. Oh, God, our team is infinitely better with that trade.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I suppose it's one thing pontificating over it, but is it feasible? Would Washington do it?
No, they'd be mad.
Why would Washington give away Chase Young when they can just trade like a 3rd rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo? They just take that, in my opinion. They don't want Goff.
No.
Yeah, okay. I agree. It is more in the realms of impossibility that goes to, but, you know, hypothetically speaking, maybe there is something there for it, and, you know, just on the theme of quarterbacks, because that was part of the reason I wanted to mention that, but again, something me and Ryan have been chatting about in college, and we've seen in the chatter there, just about quarterbacks and the, you know, the sustained effort to try and convince people that there's worth one taking at number 2 this year. John Robinson's in the chat with us. Thanks for joining us. He says, does anyone there want Malik Willis? And I can categorically say now, at number 2, absolutely bloody well not. And I think that's an agreement shared across the board here.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. He is not worth the number 2 pick. There is not a single quarterback in this draft worth the number 2 pick. And I know Dan does not agree with us on this one. And we've had a lot of chatter with him there, but, I mean, I think it's just the thing. None of them are worth this number 2 pick, are we? And we need to be looking elsewhere.
There isn't a single starting quarterback in this draft. Other than maybe someone that goes to Pittsburgh or maybe Washington, because they're desperate for a quarterback. But if you really sit down and look, which of these quarterbacks could start on any team, there isn't any of them. None of them are day 1 starter. None of them will be ready. They all have bugbears. They will have teething issues. And if you're forced to play them for a year, you will suffer.
I think, for me, at the end of the day, looking at all of the quarterbacks in the class from what I know so far, and I haven't done a huge amount of tape work on these guys, but the only one where I can look into the future and someone says to me, oh yeah, he ended up being a Hall of Famer. The only one I can see so far is Malik Willis because of the tools that he has. Like, his ceiling is incredibly high. He's got the biggest arm in this class. He's got the best wheels in this class. That's a really good place to start. But his mental attributes aren't there. His decision-making's poor. He likes to roll out of pockets when there's no need to do so. His touch is lacking. Everything's at 100 miles an hour for him. There are significant issues with him. Now, can you fix that? Yes, you can. But at the number 2 pick, you've got to have a look at the politics of this as well. The general manager will be tying himself to Malik Willis. Now, if you consider that a big risk, if you think he's a high boom bust project, then you may not want to put your mask to that guy. Even if you think that he might potentially be worth it, there will be factors pulling you away from that pick. So I don't think they're going to do it. It might work out. I think is the pick that has the biggest likelihood of working out in the quarterbacks. I'd rather do that than go for Sam Howell. Just because the upside is there. On average, I think you get a better deal. But he can't be worth 2 because it's just unlikely at this point, given where he is right now.
Yep. I don't think I can really add much more to that. So the answer to your question there, John, is I think yes, we would take him. just not at 2. You've got to be looking towards those 32, 34 picks if you're really going to start taking him there. And even then, I think it depends who's there on the board. I think defensively we really need to be looking. If there's great guys there who've slipped, maybe I still think they're more important at this moment in time. So,
I don't think we get a chance at Malik Willis. There's absolutely no chance in hell he gets to 32 because there's so many quarterback teams. He will not make it to 20.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this for a while now, but the QB situation is going to be interesting. If Willis goes really early and Corral follows him, I think you might see a sleuth of panic teams maybe forced into giving away first round picks if you start a bit of panic amongst them. So it's going to be interesting there, to say the least. Just in reference to the Young and Goff thing again, Detfan Man said, "You'd be staring at the seat of my pants as I ran to the trading window as well with this potential deal." Yes, I'm not surprised. I know you want this deal really much, and I know you'll be the first one to take it there. And John Robinson says, "Seems like mobile quarterbacks injuries occur more than standard passers." Probably agree, but again, this is with a guy like Willis. His decision making in the pocket's not clever. He doesn't need to leave protection sometimes, and he does. And that's probably one of the biggest flags there about him, I would say, for me. Don't know if you guys agree, but I know Ryan, you probably do, because we've talked about this on the college pod before, but he is very quick to leave the pocket, and that's when they start getting hurt.
Yeah, he bails. He doesn't like to step up into the pocket when a hole prepares itself. He's going to roll out, and he's going to roll it straight into sacks. He's easy to play against. If you know a quarterback likes to roll out the pocket, then you just bring outside contain. You'll just sit as someone and spy him, and you just wait for him to roll out, and then you come down on him, or you just crash down the edges and don't let him. He will be easy to play against until he's willing to sit in the pocket and take shots.
And the thing about that, and if you have a look at how the line's actually set up, you have a look at what Goff did this year. Goff was exiting the pocket far too quickly, trying to spin out and ran into sacks. That's exactly what happened. He started sitting in the pocket, stepping up in the pocket, and it coincided with some of his best play and his confidence. If Malik Willis gets drafted by the Lions and wants to be successful in the system, he's going to have clean pockets with this offensive line. So he needs to be able to hang in it. If he wants to spin out of that pocket that we're setting for him, he'll be rushing into sacks because we'll provide him with a pocket and those defenders will be outside. So,
yeah, it's one of the things you've seriously got to take into consideration with him. He is a massive development project. If you want to give 2 for him, you really, really are, as has been said, attaching yourself to him, and it could make or break you. But anyhow, we'll move the quarterback conversation on, because I just wanted to bring that up, because there's been a lot of chatter there. But let's get to the crux of the show now. Obviously, last week we talked about the offensive side of free agency, the guys who are leaving, and then looking at, the areas we need to replace and guys we could potentially bring in. So this week we're going to move on to the defensive side of the ball. I know Matt hasn't included exclusive rights free agents in this, because we can just give them a contract and they have to sign. No danger of them going elsewhere unless they want to retire. So there were 9 players initially when Matt did this list, but because Josh Woods has been re-signed, that is now down to 8 guys here. So we'll go through them one by one, give our thoughts on them, whether we want to see them back or not. And the first of them, and the most expensive, and the one I think we'll have most agreement on here, defensive tackle Nick Williams. $5 million we paid for this guy when we bought him in from the Chicago Bears. I don't think he'd ever been on a contract worth more than $1.5 million in his entire career, and we've chucked a significant amount of money at him there. And for my part, and I'm just going to say this, he has really, really not worked out for the amount of money we have invested in there, and I have no interest in seeing him come back. I'll leave it to you guys. If you want to disagree.
Oh, no. You can get his production for cheaper. I saw someone mention today William Goldstein. You got basically the same sacks, half the price, free agent this year. For what we want out of Nick Williams, it can get it for half the cost. Like I say, he showed up sometimes in big games when we're lacking of injury, but lack of consistency across the board. And unfortunately, not the most likeable character.
I mean, the guy is almost as salty as Eric Ebron, and that's saying something. Like, the guy's just not... He doesn't appear to be confident in himself because he goes searching for conflict when people are throwing shade his way. Like, we happen to say something like, he isn't performing up to his contract level, and he got really fucking shirty with us. So, you know, don't like the guy. But aside from that, just concentrating on his play, and I think I put in his $5 million contract value, I think he actually did agree to a salary reduction during the season, or just before the season in order to stay. But even accepting that, the guy has not performed to the level that he needs to stay here. He's been fine, but we don't want fine, especially when you've got rookies outside you who are looking to you for veteran leadership, by example. He hasn't cut the mustard. Bye-bye.
You know, I think the most frustrating thing for me this season, and I've said it plenty of times, was seeing him and Michael Brockers on the interior of the defensive line getting carved up as yet another running back went through. They just could not plug the gap in there to save their lives. And that's one of the things you need first and foremost there, is your ability to run block, and it just didn't seem to happen. And those two are vets who should be providing example. You saw Aleem go in there and run block to save his life. That's what he's good at, and he's a rookie, and he's developed as the season's gone on. He's got better. He's looked really good against the run. And Brockers was just as bad. The pair of them got absolutely manhandled on that interior, and just led to us getting run on so much. You know, for me, that was the most annoying thing that I saw there, and the reason that he's got to go. You know, as Ryan said, I think for what you can find for much cheaper value, you know, this makes sense to let him go. You know, I know we're not alone on that. Charles Davis in the chat says, "Bye, Nick." I would agree. You know, thank you for the service, appreciate it, but you are just going to have to go elsewhere. Depfan Man says, "Wait, this defense needs talent adjustments." Yes, it does. It did very well last year, given the fact that we were fielding, like, probably half of it at one stage was undrafted free agents and guys we drafted off practice squads from elsewhere. It far, far, far exceeded its expectations. But now we need some proper blue chip talent on there for Aaron Glenn and Aubrey Pleasant to work with. And just finishing off the QB chat, John's still in the chat. He says it doesn't make sense that we think the team will have all the personnel in place to put a rookie in there and lead us to the playoffs in terms of a quarterback. That's true. Got to maximise your rookie deals, as Matt tells us so often, and you just take one look at what's going on with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. 3 years in, he wants a big-ass contract extension they might not want to give. You don't necessarily always have 5 years with them before they start throwing their toys out the pram if they do well. So you've got to be very, very careful when it comes to drafting your rookie quarterbacks. Moving on with the defensive guys, the second defensive guy, and most of us forgot that he existed to this point, no offence to him, but he's been out. Joel Heath, defensive tackle, contract $1 million straight up. Now, I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say for this one, because I've not really seen him play, so I can't really, you know, make a call on him. But if it's a cheap contract, do we bring him back for a little bit of line depth and have him and Penasini behind Brockers, Aleem and Levi, who are hopefully going to get the majority of snaps at DT next year? Or do we say thanks but no thanks?
I don't even know who he is. So no. We had Bruce Hector protected on the practice squad for a number of weeks. You've got likes of Kevin Strong Jr. I would probably see more of those, bringing any of those back than Joel Heath, unfortunately. I think there's a reason we don't know who he is.
Just thanks to all those of you who joined the most in-depth knowledge here of the Lions podcast with us here in the UK. I don't know who he is you know, that is the kind of cutting-edge knowledge you come here for, but I agree, Ryan, I am actually with you on this one. Matt, anything you can lay light on for this one?
I mean, so Heath actually did come into camp and was regarded at a sort of similar level to Kevin Strong and Bruce Hector. He was performing at that sort of level, and then he ended up getting injured, I think, for most of the year, which was a real shame for him. I would be re-signing him to the practice squad if possible. So I think a good camp body during camp, known quantity to the coaching staff, someone who was kept around when we were cutting guys who weren't putting in the effort. So I think the guy is a high-effort guy, someone that the coaching staff clearly like. I expect to see him returning with an outside chance of making the 53, but likely the practice squad.
Agreed. I think that's the fair thing. And I'd like to see Hector get more of a role next year. If you remember back to pre-season, he played really damn well. And I think he got injured, if I remember rightly, only slightly, which is what really derailed his season there. Just going back to Nick Williams, Detfan Man does make a good point in fairness. He says the strength of Williams has been his availability. And as a defensive tackle, that is pretty big. You know, he's started, how many games? 30? Do we play his 30 games in 2 years? So the availability is a thing there, but I'd also maybe argue that, well, no, I wouldn't. You put your arse on the line when you're in there, so that is a thing for him. But at $5 million, it just feels still a little bit too rich. And we do have the guys in there to rotate in and out so that your availability isn't an issue. Because I mean, to be fair, Liam wasn't injured this year. Brock has, I don't remember been injured much this year. I know Levi was, but that was an existing condition already. So we seem to do well looking after our D-line guys this year, especially the interior ones. He makes a fair point there. So outside of the defensive tackles, moving on to defensive end, and this is the guy who's probably creating the most out of everybody. He came here a broken guy on his way out of the league. He'd been with the Falcons. He was a former first-round pick. We weren't expecting much of him. He came in and he absolutely lit up Detroit in the absence of Romeo Okwara when he went down with his Achilles injury. We are, of course, talking about Charles Harris. Came for a meager sum of $1.75 million. Probably not meager given his play at the time, but it's fair to say that this guy far, far, far surpassed the value of his contract, and he is quite rightfully going to get paid this season. The question is, who is going to pay him? Now, I've long been an advocate of us paying him. When you find guys who fit your scheme, who fit your system, that's a rarity. All these edge rushers coming through the draft, yes, they're talented guys, but you're taking a gamble on them. When you've got a proven commodity who's on a hot streak and he's got a lot to be thankful for with your organisation, hopefully, if the value is there, 100% want to see this guy return and have absolutely no interest in seeing him go elsewhere. What about you guys? Charles Harris, he's had a really good year. Now what do we do with him?
Money talks. He if he wants the end, if he wants the earth, then he can go get it somewhere else. I'm not going to fall in love with him. I'm not going to open the checkbook and bow down to his demands, because 100% you can get this you can replicate what he's just done in the draft, and I will hang my hat on that. I can find someone that can do what he's just done, maybe even in the second round. Like I say, he's had a fantastic year, but I won't be held to ransom by him, not with the class that's coming up. So I'd like to see him back, but I'd like him to also keep a bit of gratitude in the back of the mind, who's the one that helped him salvage the career. So keep his demands in check, but I'm more than happy to see him to return if you give him, I don't know, what do you want? Would you want $5.5 million a year? 2 years, 10 million? Is that fair? Like I say, if he wants, is that too high?
I think that's probably going to be too low for him. I think he'll be after something like 2 years, 13. But if you can get the guaranteed money down, so say 5 million guaranteed, but 2 years, 13, then I could be on board with something like that. The guy's performed here and he's not performed elsewhere. Now, if someone offers him a massive packet, like, thank you for your service, you've gone and earned that by performing well here, and you're a good example to the players that are going to come here, and that's absolutely fine. But he should want to stay because he fits with this team. He fits with this coaching.
Please tell me I've lost Matt there.
Yes, it's me, sorry.
You did jump for a second, yeah.
God. Oh, I had the worst feeling there.
No.
Gone.
But sorry about that. I don't know if you heard the end of it, but I just said there should be mutual interest, so they should go for it.
Yeah, I think I fully agree there. It's, you know, to a point for both of you. I would hope and would think, the kind of character he is, he would ask good money here. I mean, for me, if we are going to give him a multi-year deal, backload it a little, because the cap's going to go up to 253 million purportedly within the next 2 years. So if you are going to pay him a little bit more and you can backtrack it a bit, do it. We've not got that much money going forward into the future, and I think he's entirely worth his deal. So it's interesting. We're gonna be hearing a lot about this, but they've only got a couple of weeks now to sign him up before he hits free agency. Whether they let him test it out and then come back if he can't get anything, maybe the way they go. Especially if he's thinking along the lines you guys are, that maybe there is a better deal there. If you can find one, great. If you can't, come back here. We'll pay him what he's earned. So we'll see. John's in the chat. He goes, "Does base ale taste great in the UK as it does in Michigan?" It's not. Is it bass? I'm thinking musically here. Bass, bass, whatever the hell. I don't know what that is. You've been over to
It's alright. I've had it here anyway. It's not bad.
I've never had it. It's a northern drink, so I get different ales down here. Still get ale, but don't get that one. So.
You sure? I thought it was just all like martinis and margaritas and stuff down there in the south.
And Heineken. Hey, I tell you what, Heineken's not bad. So, we'll get there. But Ryan says it's decent, so hopefully that answers your question there, John. He's enjoyed that there. Moving on with the defensive guys. So now we're moving into the linebacker core. So we've got three linebackers who are out of contract this year. First one, we've mentioned him a little bit already, but perennial special teamer under Matt Patricia. Didn't know if he had a future here with the team or not, but Dan Campbell, as soon as he arrived here, started saying rave things about this guy. Loved the way he carried himself. He very soon got a starting slot in the team once Jamie Collins' lazy arse was kicked out of Detroit. Obviously talking about Jalen Reeves Mabin, the second to last guy left from the 2017 draft class. 2.4 million he was on this year. He came in, did a very admirable job in a position of severe need for us. Now, bearing in mind, this was his first real year as a first teamer. There were mistakes in there, but I think there was a lot more good than bad. Interested to get your guys' thoughts on this one first. Jalen Reeves Mabin, what are you doing with him this season?
To be honest, I think you'd have a mutiny in the locker room if you showed no interest in bringing him back. If anything, this guy deserves it. He's put in some proper grind in the last 3 years, hasn't he? He's played with limited touches. He's been a special teams ace. He's been dying to get on the field, and it's taken him longer than they wanted. I think he's about 28, so he's not the youngest anymore. He's been around a while. But as you mentioned last year, he came up with some huge game-changing plays. There was forced fumbles, there was fumble recoveries, there was huge stops on fourth down. I'd say he saved some touchdowns. He was great at coming up in the line of scrimmage. Good tackler. Coverage is always where he needed work, but when the bodies started dropping, he came into his own and he put in a really admirable effort. I would love to see him back. I'm not going to give him the huge role that he's after because I do want to bring in a big name, like say through the draft. But for what we saw him last year as a solid like linebacker 2 or 3, I'd gladly see him back there. Like I say, it's up to him. If he thinks he can start elsewhere and he wants to test the market, I implore him to go do that.
And just before I let you on this one, Matt, what would you pay him, Ryan? Because obviously he's had $2.4 million this year. We are squeezed for money this year, but he's been a first teamer. He's got more, so he's probably going to expect more. Where would your ceiling go for what you would pay him?
It's hard to give him more than like 5 million. Like say that 4.425 maybe. Give it some incentives as well to work towards. Like say if you can give him anywhere between 3 and 4, like that base salary, let him earn the rest of the incentives. Like I said, I'd give him max 5. If it's just going to be another year as well, like I say, because he might not want to commit long-term future here.
So I'd bring him back 100%. I really love what he did. He has shown more willing than pretty much anyone on the team, I think. Like his energy is infectious. His execution improved all the way through the year to the point where there was a couple of games where he actually was just all over the field, making tackles here, there, and everywhere. And you have a look at his effectiveness on special teams. So you have a look at the amount of speed the guy has when he actually clocks onto what's happening. And that's the biggest thing for him is recognition. At linebacker, that's pretty much everything, right? You recognise what the play is and you can go and make it quickly, no matter how quick you are. But he's got the speed to back it up. So if he can improve his mental processing, and I think that comes with the reps, which he hasn't had in the past, and that's why he improves so quickly. Another year of that would be really, really interesting. I also think that he's actually underutilized anyway, because I think there's more he can do. I could see him blitzing off the edge. I think, as a kind of just a kind of misdirect, you can line him up on the edge and just blitz him. I think that could be something that could have in his arsenal. So we'll see what happens with that and how he develops. But I would be looking at something like 2 years, $6.5 million, maybe. I'd be happy to guarantee quite a lot of that, maybe 4. Because I can see him being an LB2/3 along with Derek Barnes, takes the LB2 job and gradually hands it off to Derek Barnes, but can also be part of a 3 linebacker package as a starter. Hopefully, as Ryan says, we bring in a big name to go alongside the 2 of them.
Yeah, I think I agree pretty much with what you two guys have said there in regards to this. I think the money, I think you're speaking in the right terms, maybe the 3-4 million, maybe again backload a deal just over 2 years, because again the cap's going to go up, so it won't affect us too far going forward. But again, it's like with Charles Harris, he's the example of a player you want on your team, a guy who had previously hitherto not been given an opportunity, or Harris had, but they've taken opportunities they've been given in Detroit, and they've really made the plays here, and they've really wanted us to we've really wanted them to do well, and they have. So as Ryan says, these are the guys you want around for the locker room, for the example they set. So hopefully we can come to terms with a deal on him there. In relation to Harris, Charles Davis in the chat says he had 1 good year in his career. If he wants to stay, he'll get a fair deal. If he wants to open the vault, show him the door, maybe get a comp pick later. Exactly. I think that's the thing. He's going to go one of 2 ways. Either he'll show loyalty to us and we'll get him on a good value contract, or he'll go elsewhere and look, he's earned his money and he deserves every bit of it. If someone will pay him enough that he gets us into the comp pick territory, even better. Who knows? And I'll just pass this one on to you, Matt. So John Robinson, he's asking us about beer again. He goes, how about the Bristol Beer Factory? Well, Matt lives in Bristol, so if he's not heard of this one, then I really struggle with him. How is the Bristol Beer Factory, Matt?
No, I've had some of their beers before. I think that my mother-in-law, or she's not my mother-in-law, but my girlfriend's mum bought me a selection box of beers of theirs. Maybe last Christmas or the Christmas before, so I've definitely had it. I'm trying to remember what I really liked. I think they had a milk stout that I really enjoyed. Nothing else comes to mind. I'm not a big craft ale guy, so it's something I get given a lot and I enjoy it when I have it, but it's not something I naturally buy. I'm a sucker for cheap, nasty lager, really, so I'm a basic bitch.
Yeah. Me and Ryan disown him for that, but for the rest of it, he's alright. So, we all have our problems in life there, but we love him all the same. Back to the players. So, we're talking about linebacker. So, we've just talked about JRM. Now, obviously, the one guy who's caused a lot of chatter this year had a really bad start. Then Jamie Collins left, and he got a lot better. Even to the point where me, who has been uber critical of him, and I've argued with Matt about him so many times now, it's unreal. Even I came to respect him by the time the season was done. Of course, we're talking about Alex Anzalone. Came in for $1.75 million. Obviously knows Dan Campbell really well. Dan Campbell seems to impeccably trust him on the field. Carried the green dot on defense, and as I say, once he was unshackled from Jamie Collins, he looked a hell of a lot better. But as Ryan said, did hint that he might not be coming back in a post he made on Instagram in January, but putting all that a lot to one side, theoretically speaking, none of this has happened. You've got the choice of bringing him back or not bringing him back. What do you do?
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm going to say, I thank him for his service, and I thank him for everything he did last year, but I'm not bringing him back. I liked everything he did this year. Like I say, once we got rid of that bum Jamie Collins, he came into a world of his own. He got more responsibility, which he took on board well, and he was a good mentor for the young guys. But I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go younger. I'm going to try bring in someone that can offer a spark. Like I say, I know he's not expensive, but I feel like what he offers and how high his ceiling is, he's got limited. I know there's a great player there, but for me, I feel like I got the best out of him, and I did it on the cheap deal as well. I don't think he'll come back at the same price. So this is going to be where I cut corners and save money, and I try to replicate what I got from there from a rookie or from someone that's already on the roster.
I think there's value in bringing him back, but the issue that I have is that I think it's a straight choice between bringing JRM back and bringing Anzalone back, because I'm hoping that we bring in another body or two in free agency and or the draft. So I only want to return one of them, and I want to return Jalen Reeves. Anzalone is a stand-up guy. I really like him. And if he came back for vet minimum, it'd be hard to turn that down because his presence in the locker room is really great. But as Ryan says, I don't think he's coming back for that sort of deal. So I reluctantly think we're saying goodbye to him.
It is a tough one, isn't it? Because if he does go, and we do fix it in the draft, it is going to be a very young linebacker core next year. I don't know if we're going to spend in free agency on somebody, with not that much money at this moment in time, while Trey Flowers is still here, and whether we just want to at all if we decide there's no one there. So do you go with a really young linebacker core and let them develop, or do you bring him back to mentor them at the right price without trying to hinder what you're developing? Obviously you need to keep the money sensible, and he might decide after a year of being a starter that he deserves more than 1.75 million, which probably does. So he might be another who finds a good free agency offer elsewhere. I don't know. I would probably lean to letting him go if we invest high in the draft in a linebacker. I want one very early within the first 3 picks, a really good one. If we do that, then I think you can make it worth it. But that's just me with that one. Charles Davis says we don't need to spend this year in free agency. Next year would be the fill-in year, I think, for the missing pieces of the puzzle. Something you guys would agree with? Are you fussed if we spend in free agency or not? Or, we'll see. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Potential guys we want to bring in, but just on the whole, would you be bothered if we made a splash or if we didn't?
There's money there available, so I'd like to spend it, but I don't want to do what the Patriots did and just throw money at every Tom, Dick and Harry, because they just threw shit at the wall and see what stuck. And it for me, it didn't work for them. There's too many receivers this year that are too overrated and want too much money. I do not want to throw money at a wide receiver. I don't want to touch Godwin or Juju or someone like that. Like, say, just don't do it. I'll only do it on areas of expertise like safety, a cornerback, a linebacker. I will spend money on defense. We can fix the offense in the draft for me.
Or anyone who's any way associated with the Patriots, except maybe JC Jackson. But no more Patriots. Hashtag.
Yeah, so for me, I expect us to spend. I think the spending is happening. But if I put the hat on where I was making the case for trading Jared Goff, I would also make the case for not spending this year. I think that what we did last year of being conservative, taking cheap one-year guys in order to see if we have something there, and then re-signing them to longer deals if they prove it, is probably the way to go this year too. Try and accumulate a few more comp picks, and then go absolutely all in 2023. And by all in, I mean take risks, big risks in the draft and in free agency. Accumulate all the cap space that you can and really go after it in a Patriot-style way in 2023, because I think that's when we're likely to have a really good shot at doing something. But I don't see it this year. And what we spend this year in cap is money we can't roll over. So we are detracting from what we can do in future years. And at the end of the day, with backloading of contracts as well, 2023, 2024 should be really big years for us if we want it to be that way. We can choose our path. That's the one I would choose. But if you listen to Pride of Detroit, if you listen to Lions Wire, if you listen to some of the other draft nicks out there, people think that we're going to spend in this off-season. Expect it. I expect it.
I just pick up there. We can carry over if we don't spend now. Whatever we don't spend this year, we can carry over.
Yes, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can carry over stuff, but we can't carry it over if we spend it, is what I'm saying.
Oh no, that's fair. Well, I guess obviously maybe what he's trying to say there is he'd rather just do a little less this year and then carry it over the money next year to make... I mean, if you were given a choice, what would you rather do? Would you rather spend in this free agency, or would you rather carry over as much spare capital as you could to next year to really have sort of a mega push with the 2 first-rounders, obviously, in the next draft as well?
I don't really like this free agency period. I've looked at the positions of need, and I've looked at the players available, and I'm just not feeling it, actually. I can get behind saving some of it. Like, there's a tight, like I say, I might splash on a tight end too. Like I say, there's guys out there that are going to be available, won't be too heavy. Like I say, there's odd players on defense, but like receiver, like I say, quarterback, defensive line, like there's players like that. I just don't want to touch them because I know we'll get fleeced. I know if we go in for a big receiver, like someone like Robinson or someone like Michael Gallup, like we'll get fleeced, because they'll see us coming straight away and we'll overpay. So they're positions I would like to stay away from.
Would you like to carry over, Matt, or would you like to see the money spent now and sort of ease the rebuild rather than have one big lump sum next year?
No, give me the lump sum. Like, the biggest turnarounds happen when you spend the lump sum. And people don't want to regard it that way, and I'm not saying tank.
He said the T word and his internet cut him off.
Sorry.
Go back to the I'm not saying tank. Your internet cut you off because you said the T word. We don't do that.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I'm not saying the T word. And it's come up saying my internet connection's unstable, so apologies. I'm not saying tank, but what I'm saying is you have a look at the roster we had last year. And the team was competitive against most teams all the way through, losing by 1 score when we lost the majority of the time, and beating teams we had no right to beat. Well, actually, maybe we did have a right to beat them because we were actually playing greater than the sum of our parts. Now, lose some guys in free agency, we have a look at this draft, and we have a look at the number of picks we have. Maybe we have to get a bit lucky with the draft, but I can see us filling the majority of our needs through the draft. The draft is deep this year in almost all positions, and it's something that people aren't really talking about. But we've had an argument back and forth with the aforementioned person from Pride of Detroit about how deep different classes are. Well, I'm sorry, but the safety class is deep, the linebacker class is deep, the defensive, the edge class is deep, the wide receiver class is deep. Oh, hang on a minute, they're all fucking deep. Like, we can get really good players in the 5th round this year. So I don't think the pressure is there to spend on free agency if we're taking a holistic view at everything. So I would be a proponent of hanging back this year, and if we can roll into 2023 with really good cap resources, really good cap resources and really good draft picks, but a really solid base to work from to begin with, I think that is the peak of where we could be. But if we spend in free agency now a bit, and we get 1 extra win, we don't have that money to spend in future years, and we've lost draft position, and we haven't really challenged for the division title or the Super Bowl. So I don't get why you would do that.
No, that's absolutely fair comment. So, Charles, I think there's agreement across the board here. You know, I don't think anyone's really in a hurry to spend unless the right guy is there at the right price. Then, yeah, we agree. Hold fire, really have a go at next year. Because he says, yeah, we can carry over some cash. Yes, we certainly can. We only carried over 1 million this year, which hasn't made it the best in the world. He also goes, I respect Risden, Jeff's opinion. He's more tuned into the team than I am. He's more tuned into the team than the rest of us. We love him. We've had him on here before, and he's great. John Robinson says, if Hutchinson is taken at 1 and Dan and Brad can't agree about Kayvon, maybe the Jets would move to 2 and give us 4 and the 35th then take Hamilton.
We're not shifting to. I think I can't remember who's seen it said on Twitter. There's nothing to give up to for. There's no quarterback. You don't trade up for an edge player in this class. You don't trade up for a defensive tackle either, because you've got Evan Neal, you've got Cross, and you've got Ikwanu, yeah. So there's no need to trade up for offensive tackle either. So there's no positions. We're never going to shift to.
See, I think the only thing in terms of my point of view, I think it's more likely we trade if Neal goes first. I think people are more likely to want to trade up and get a tackle than an edge. I think that's it for me. Talk about positional value. If Neal goes and people aren't sold on Cross and they want Ikwanu, I think the Texans are shopping Tunsil, so they're going to need a left tackle if he goes. So teams are going to want to jump above him to get the next tackle in the draft. I think there's a possibility there. But outside of that, I don't think we do. But I think we'd all take the trade. I think we'd all take a second round pick and 4 and still get Hamilton for 2. But yeah, again, again, I just don't know whether it's going to happen or not. Charles again says in the chat, I say pick up bargain free agencies after the draft to have something to prove. Agreed. I mean, I guess, did we get Charles Harris after the draft last year? I think we got a lot of our free agent guys late on, did we not?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it could be another way.
I don't recall.
Those 1 year cheaper deals to prove it players who might do something, I think that could certainly be the way to go. But obviously we've got a lot of youngsters who are developing really well, so we don't necessarily need all the free agents in the world to be able to do that. Anyhow, moving on with our players there. So last of the linebacking core, we didn't see him this year because of injury, which was a shame. Sean Dion Hamilton cost us 653 grand. Obviously not much we can surmise from the season because he was injured, but would you give him another go around for the same money? See if we can get something out of him. Obviously special teams he's there for.
No, I don't can't try and give him up practice squad. It's hard to justify a 53 even at any price, because total unknown. Even though people at Cleveland thought that it looks like a potential rotational guy, I don't want to waste even $1 million trying to find out. Let's just try to find out and activate if needs be. So I don't think he'll stay on a practice squad or get picked up, but I'm fine letting him go if that's the case.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I think he's a practice squad guy, and he could threaten to start at some point during camp. But I remember going back to camp that people were saying that he was looking better than the other linebacking options that were out there at the start of the season. All of them. You know, he was looking like the best of the lot. So I think there's something there, but there's a long way to go for him. So practice squad at best at the moment.
Yeah, you've got a very crowded room for those late linebacker roles, don't you? Obviously, Anthony Pittman got snaps this year. Beckett's been on the practice squad all year, so he's probably been picking up the way we play, getting better. I know they've said nice things about him, so it's going to be difficult there maybe for him to get him. But like I say, maybe a practice squad berth, you never know. And finally, in terms of the outgoings, we're going to move on to one of our most favourite positions to talk about, especially this draft. And of course, we're talking about safety. Lions have had a huge need at safety for years now, and we've got 3 guys this year who are out of contract. Got to make decisions on whether we want to take them forward. First guy, Dean Marlow. So we signed him for $1 million. Now, wasn't really feeling the love for him during the season, but when you look back on how he's played, some of the plays he's made, and just how well he's done in general for the amount you've paid for him, I actually think we've done pretty well with Dean Marlow. I think he's contributed pretty well. Obviously, he's had his bad plays, but that secondary is young, it's untested, it's inexperienced. They've all been making some dodgy plays back there. But I think overall, he's done really well for us. So, I mean, what do we do with him? Do we try and keep him again as a rotational depth piece going forward, or did you not see enough from him to warrant him staying?
If we could bring him back, I don't know if we're getting back at minimum, but if we're getting back for under $2 million, I would gladly take him back. Like I say, if we can keep him cheap like that, because, like I say, he made mistakes, but for me, he was asked to do a lot more than Buffalo ever asked him to do. like say, because they had Poyer, they had like Micah Hyde. Like say, he was much more rotational there, just to step in. Like say, once the bodies and like say, he played a lot when Walk went down with the concussion as well. So he came in at relief and he played a lot of snaps when he needed to, and he made some good tackles in the open field. So as a body and as a team that likes to play 2-3 safety packages, it's a crucial position for us. So I think he'll certainly be a candidate to stay. And I think as well, market might not be super hot, so I see there being interest on both sides on him keeping here. If the price is right, I think it'll be a reunion, and Pleasant will want to keep him here for breaking a new guy.
Matt, how are we feeling about Marlow?
I mean, we're just lacking anyone in the room right now. It's like I don't even recall if we have any safeties under contract at this point. So,
Will.
Well, is he a cornerback? Is he a safety now? Don't know, but he's not good at either of them. Marlow Marlow's an upgrade on Will Harris, obviously. Down the stretch, he improved a lot, and I think that was a result of him seeing increased snaps. So I think there's something in there. As Ryan said, 3 safety sets, he's going to be a crucial piece, and he could be threatening to start this season for us, especially if we can only either re-sign Tracy or sign one big guy in free agency or draft one guy. I mean, I think we all think that we need to get in a couple of starters, and Marlow maybe isn't a part of that. But there's a big risk that we only get one, and then we need to find someone else. And Marlow could well be that guy. And if you told me that he was starting the season, it's not ideal, but I can think of worse, like Will Harris. So let's bring him back. Under 2 million sounds good to me. I don't think he'll want much more than that. I don't think the amount of snaps he's had demands more than that. 1.5 million, be perfect.
So, at the right price, we both bring him back. Yeah, I think we agree there. He's done well, and give him another chance. Give him maybe another 1-year deal to come in, do even better. Get himself a good deal going forward with us or elsewhere. You just mentioned him then, Matt. We'll move on to him now. The second big guy in free agency, obviously Charles Harris is one of the big ones, but the other guy who has split opinion a lot over the years, Tracy Walker. He's just finishing off his rookie deal. Was on $878,000 as his contract last year. Obviously, wherever he plays, Lions or elsewhere, he's going to be earning far more than that this season. The Tracy Walker question, it's the $1 million one or few $1 million one. Where's he going, and what do we do with him? Did he show enough in that last year that at the right price we bring him back, or maybe pay very good safety money to him?
For me, bringing him back, I'm all for bringing him back. Jesse Bates is going to get tagged, and Marcus Williams is going to want too much money. So the free agency market in safety for me is not looking good. So if we make this decision to not give him what he wants or not try compromise and work on a deal with him, I think we could really be in trouble, as you mentioned. There's no one under contract. If we let Tracy go because we're going to squabble over pennies, and then we look and realise that there's no even real upgrades on the market and we're relying on the draft, that is probably one of the worst case scenarios. I'd say he had a great year. I'd say he had a good, nice bounce back. I think within not paying silly money, I'd certainly be bringing him back. He's one of the leaders on that defense. Doesn't take a snap off as long as he's not hurt. But he's well respected in the locker room, and I think he's someone that Aubrey Pleasant trusts as well as one of the generals on the field. So it's hard to really make a case unless it's really bad money to not bring him back, because he's coming into his prime now. He's about to turn 28, so you're hoping these are going to be his best years.
What about you, Matt?
I'm really torn on Tracy. So, first half of the year, I think I remember a stat after week 6 or 7. He was PFF's number 2 graded safety. And then by the end of the year, he's middle of the pack. Unlike a lot of people that we've mentioned so far tonight, who increased their productivity down the stretch, Tracy regressed down the stretch. And there was a point in time during that really good run at the start that we were kind of saying, oh, maybe we should re-sign him now. He's going to want big money. Maybe we'll get him at a bit of a discount. I think I remember thinking that, average of 10 million might be a bargain at this point. Now I get here, and if he plays like he did at the end of the season when everyone else was coming into their own, it needs to be at good value for me. And I think he's going to want more than that. Now, I agree with Ryan that it's a really bad position you're in if you let him go, because you're pretty desperate at that point. But at the same time, I'm not ready to let him fleece me, because Tracy's got a long way to go. Like, we ruined him for his rookie contract. After that first year where he was really good, we played him in a position that he isn't suited to, and he didn't play well in it. And then we played him in a position that he was suited to, and he started to show something. But now at the end of that deal, I can very much see a scenario where we overpay him, and he plays badly. And that's a big risk for me, especially in a position that's so important in this scheme. So I want him back, but I want him to take a very team-friendly deal. And I wouldn't want to pay more than $7 million on average.
So, is that where the boundary is for you, Ryan? I mean, if we're not going to get anyone in free agency, and we don't go for Kyle Hamilton in the draft, and we're sort of lacking options there, if he starts pressing you for more money, would you go higher than 7, or would you just straight up say no? Where's your boundary for him and his wages?
7 to maybe 8.5 if we can do incentives, but I agree. Like, Tracy knows the Lions are in a position at safety, and he might try to look to capitalise on that. Like I say, he may not. Everyone thinks he's this great guy, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to look out his best interests. Is coming at his prime. He's going to want paying, and that doesn't mean that he's going to just take this team-friendly deal. So, if at any point, say he's creeping towards 9-10 a year, you might have to think about just saying, "Thank you very much," moving on, and then readjust your draft strategy. Like I say, because there's guys on the market, but if we do go all in on him, and then next year, like God forbid, touch wood, like say picks up another bad concussion, or he does play poorly down the stretch, and then we look like a mistake, we'll be tied to him. Like say, this could be a 2-3 year deal where it's not the easiest to shift him. So he's gonna have to sit down. I'd like them to start negotiations early. I'd like them to gauge where his market is as well. Like say, I'd probably start talking to him now to see what his head's at, because he's going to want to test free agency. He's not going to take the first deal to try and make him. He will go out there and listen and then come back to us, I think. There's never just going to be, hey, just telling me what you want and I'll give you it. So it's going to be a long, drawn-out discussion, I feel.
It's incredibly tough, isn't it, this situation? As you said, the Lions are sort of on a bit of a barrel here because we're not the deepest at the position, and, he does have a lot of leverage here. And I guess it all depends what you're going to do with that number 2 pick. I mean, if Kyle Hamilton comes here, that changes the narrative drastically, I guess, and would sort of, we wouldn't have as much reliance on bringing him back, or you could pay them both. Who knows? It's tough. The
safety position has been managed so poorly by previous management. Obviously, with forcing out Diggs, like say we never replaced Glover Quinn. We've had other guys out there that have not panned out, so it's been a bit of a crapshoot safety for a few years now, and it's not been. They've kind of kicked it down the bucket and now realised, well, you walk in the room and, well, you haven't got any safeties here. Like I said, the only one under contract currently, well, I'm not going to say his name. I'm not even going to give him the airtime.
It physically pains him to say. I mean, for me, I think, as Ryan said, we've put ourselves in a position here, and I think we will exacerbate that by paying more money to Tracy or going for Marcus Williams. For me, I would just get the youth in at safety and rebuild the core from the ground up. I'd double dip in the draft. I've said this from the beginning. I'm taking Hamilton first. I'm taking another safety with him. Put Marlow in there and just start it from scratch. I just don't want to overpay for somebody. But again, Tracy seems like a real stand-up guy, and I'm not going to for a second suggest that he's going to try and stiff the Lions in any way, shape or form. I just don't know what's going to go on, but
would we agree he's the only candidate for the tag? Would anyone tag him?
What's the safety? The safety tag's over 10 million, though, isn't it?
It's about 11. Is it 11.2? Something like that, I think.
Well, I think... Did I get asked the question? I think Ash asked the question. When I put a question, he goes, would you rather... Would you rather pay Marcus Williams 60 million or would you rather pay? It was either draft Kyle Hamilton, or I'll just put it out there. Would you rather pay Marcus Williams 16 million, or would you rather pay Tracy like 10 and get Kyle in as well? I don't.
Well, I'd have to take the latter one. I am not giving Marcus Williams 16 million on any planet whatsoever. Even I'm not giving him 16 million and taking Kyle as well, because I'm not tying myself to that contract.
Yeah, I'm with you, 100%.
I know there are a lot of guys who agree with us. My man Lions Rumble 81, he is in the building. He says facts, take the safety. Hashtag Hamilton is so on the money. We've spoken a lot over on Luke G's channel. He hosts over there with him now. He's an absolutely wonderful guy, and we completely agree on this. Hamilton is the guy to draft in this one. Utter blue chip prospect, resets your secondary completely with so many good young guys in there. You know, it's just going to do wonders to this team. So, but we'll get into the new guys in a moment. I'll just finish off this, the outgoings. CJ Moore, final safety. He's a restricted free agent, 585k restricted free agent. I believe we can offer him a deal, but if someone offers higher, he's free to take that elsewhere. Am I getting that one right, Matt? As restricted,
Sorry, repeat.
Restricted free agent. You can offer them a deal, but if someone outbids us, he has the right to go there, doesn't he? That's what an exclusive rights free agent doesn't get.
Yeah, so restricted free agent, you can treat them like a normal free agent and just offer them any deal you want, or you can tender them. You have the right of first refusal deal, you have the second round tender and the first round tender. The first and second round tenders, all of the tenders are at their own salary mark. So I think the right of first refusal is something like 2 million. The first round tender is something like, I can't remember now, 5, 6? No, that's the second round tender. Second round tender is something like 5. Can't remember what the first round is, but right of first refusal tender, you just get the opportunity to match the deal that's better than that one.
Yeah.
And then in the second and first round tenders, I think you lose them, but you get that pick in return.
Yeah, the team getting them, I think, has to cough it up. They have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know we were talking about it with Evan Brown last week, putting him on a tender. But CJ Moore, anyhow, special teams specialist, for want of a better word. Obviously doing sort of what JRM were doing last year, but I don't know. For me at safety, I've always found his tackling to be abysmal, and there's bits to work on in there. I don't know what his upside out of special teams is, and I know it doesn't cost much, but for me, I think this is one you pay him less to stay on special teams, and that's great, but outside of that, I've not got a lot of interest for me. But what about you guys?
Nah, I'm not paying him that money just for special teams. You can replicate with what he does with an undrafted free agent. We've no disrespect to CJ Moore. You can find someone to be a gunner on kick return, punt returns, and step in at safety needs be. He had a great final game of the year, made those big plays, but like I said, that was the season winding down. Like I said, I don't trust him with a starting role. I know he's crucial to the special teams unit, but even for, like, say, those $600,000, like, that is where I will cut corners.
So for me, I am 100% interested in keeping him here. And the reason for that is that I think he's the personal protector for the punter in the punt game. And it's a really technically difficult role. I don't think it is something which is easy to replicate from an undrafted free agent. I think it's something that you can get passable play from. But if you listen to someone like Eric Schlitt, whose opinion I trust on special teams eminently, he's one of the better guys in the league when it comes, I think, to special teams play and evaluating it. He thinks he's elite at that role. So if you can return the guy at vet minimum, don't tender him. He's not worth that. But if he will return at vet minimum, I think that'd be a really solid investment for us while giving us backup safety play at a reasonable price. But at the end of the day, when we had Jason Bell on, we were talking about special teams versus playing on defense or offense. And he said there is a drop-off between the players that play both. And at the end of the day, elite special teams players almost on purpose don't play in the other two phases of the game because it detracts from doing special teams well. Sometimes you need to invest in special teams a little bit, even if that means just taking a veteran on a minimum deal. And I think this is one of those guys.
See, but where I see it is we got rid of Mull back at long snapper, which is also a credible position, and we brought in Scott Daly off the street. So we can find someone to protect the punter. Like I say, I don't want to spend money purely on special teams if I don't have to, but you make a strong case. Like I say, he is one of those exclusive guys that plays his phase of the game very well.
I don't know. If you've got a spot on the 53, I think you've got to provide some upside for the main team as well. I know special teams is a duty there, but we need a guy who's going to progress into the first team, like Reeves maybe did this year. Up until last year, he was just a special teams guy, and we were saying last season, are we going to keep him because of his upside? But he's come in the team and played well. I just don't know whether I see the same with CJ Moore or not. So it's a difficult one for me. But again, I'm with Wright. It's got to be for little money. But personally, I'd like to see someone come in who will be able to do similar on special teams or grow into that role and offer something to the first team as well. Because we've been so depth shy at safety, and he's still not broke into that side. That says something to me. But we'll see. If you're wondering why Matt's got a big-ass grin on his face, by the way, it's because Depth Fan Man in the chat goes, I'm not sure I've ever agreed with Turner as much during the Save live stream. Right on, mate. And look at him there, smiling away. That's why he gets paid the big bucks to lead this podcast. He knows what he's talking about there. Theoretical big bucks, anyhow. If I could, I'd pay you a lot of money to do this. So,
Oh, I appreciate that, man. In theory, I would accept that.
Anywho, before I massage his ego any further, that is all the outgoing free agents in terms of the defense there. We've had our say on them all now, and it remains to be seen what the Lions do with them. We're going to finish this off with a look at some of the free agency classes that we've just been berating as not very good, and seeing whether there's players that we'd like to bring in their absence. And we're starting at the top of the defense in the trenches, defensive tackles. Now for me, and I've made this clear on the podcast, I have zero interest in seeing any more defensive tackles come this year. I don't want to draft one high. I don't want to see another there. I'd prefer the rookies being here and getting their snaps and developing. Brockers is going to be in there now. Put Aleem in next to him. Get the snaps there. Hopefully get Levi healthy. Get him in there in some packages as well. Rotate them round. Penasini deserves his snaps in there as well. You've got 4 guys who can come in, do a good job. If you've got to draft a guy, maybe put him in there with it. But for me, I'm not interested in seeing another vet come, taking away the snaps away from our youngsters, a la Nick Williams. But I know, Matt, in the little pieces you've done for us, you've put up a list there. You've put up a few names, obviously. Efe Abada is out of contract. Foley Fatakasi. I believe I've mentioned him somewhere before. I remember the name. It might have been last year. I might have been hankering after him as a DT. But, guys, defensive tackles, is there anyone on this free agency market who is catching your interest, who you would like to see come to the Lions?
It's not somewhere I'm going to throw money, so I'm probably going to be a bit of a cheapskate here. So someone like William Goldstein, like say, that can generate a bit of pressure from the interior. He won't be that expensive either, because he's creeping up in years as well, takes reps off as well. So he's not someone I think that would attract massively from those snaps from the young guys. But that's it. I'd probably bring in one body. Like say, it's time to see what John, Aleem and Levi can do that healthy. I don't want to bring in a guys, like say, because we've already got, like say, Hector as well. So it's a pretty crowded D-line room if it happens to pan out that way.
I think that there's a good chance that someone comes into the room just because, the max roster size until you've got the 53 man is 90. So there are going to be bodies that come in inevitably. And my sort of thinking was, okay, so someone's coming in, who could it be? But also, there's a non-zero chance that Brockers is gone some way or another. He's been listed in most articles I've seen when it comes to possible cuts, trades, all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a very short list of people because we don't have many of them, but he is someone who could go. He wasn't particularly good. And if Brockers goes, there's a lack of a veteran presence in that room. So, especially if Williams is gone too, I'm looking at a few guys. I think Fatu Kazi, after I put that name, maybe he's going to be a bit too rich for us. I think he's wanting a fairly large extension from the Jets. There's a few names in there who have done really well on rookie deals, but I don't know how much they're going to want to get paid coming off of that. You've got people like Sebastian Joseph from the Rams. You've got Abada, who you mentioned earlier. And I'm a big fan of Abada, not just because he's out of the UK, but I think he's got pass rush upside to him, which you don't get from a lot of DTs. A lot of the guys that I've seen in this list are basically just run stuffers and don't get much interior pressure from these guys. Justin Jones is a run stuffer, but he could be someone we look at. Derek Nadi from Kansas. Who else is there? BJ Hill from Cincinnati obviously had a massive interception against Mahomes, I think, down the stretch in the conference championship. He's obviously a massive guy in the center of that line, a bit more of a nose tackle, I think. But there's a few names there I'd be interested in at the lower end of things. But I'm just having such a big problem actually trying to project these contracts. It's difficult. So I'm not quite sure about the DTs. But it's a low priority for me.
Agreed. For me, it's low priority. I've seen people wanting to go with Jordan Davis in the draft very early, and there's no need. You've got two guys who you've invested heavily in just last year. Second and third round picks are good draft capital inputs, and I think you need to give them the snaps. Really.
Just on Jordan Davis, it would be the most pointless pick the Lions could make in the entire draft, because we took PFF's number one rookie defensive tackle in the most recent draft, or maybe he was number two, but he was in the top two. He was in the all-rookie team. Why would you go and pick a player who primarily plays in his primary position? Like, Davis and McNeil, I'm sorry, they are not playing together. McNeil can play at the 3-tech, but he is best at the nose, and I don't think you can play Davis outside of the nose. I don't think he can play 3 or 5 tech on a long-term basis. If you want to play a 4-3 defense as your base, then maybe you can. But we don't, and we do get into nickel a lot, but in nickel, you're not putting 2 run stuffers on the field. Sorry, so don't invest in Jordan Davis, because you might as well cut Aleem while you're doing it, and there's no point in that, because Aleem did really well.
Exactly, and that's why I don't want to see that. I want to see the rookies getting the snaps next year and developing as players. That's absolutely what we need to do. So, I agree the board, defensive tackle is down the list of priorities there. Next up, you've put defensive end 1 or outside linebacker 1. I think maybe looking more at the outside linebackers here if the draft is anything to go by. And obviously, you've got your Von Millers, your Chandler Jones, your Anthony Barrs, the really expensive guys who are also getting on in there as well. But there are some interesting names, and I know the name that stuck out to me, I know he's an older guy, but we were all sort of really, I remember a lot of chatter about him. Obviously, KJ Wright, the outside linebacker from the Raiders. A lot of us were interested in him last year. He's not on the most money in the world there, but age is a factor with him. He'll be 33 at the start of next season, so is he worth the output there? So our own JRM's up there. You've got Devondre Campbell, the Green Bay Packers linebacker who exploded this year, who's going to get a ton of money. Again, this is something I'd like to see in the draft sorted out, but I mean, there's a good market there with some decent players on. If you want to spend a bit of money, which names stand out as guys you'd want to go after on this OLB market?
I think some people might not agree with this, but there's a name that's flying around. Like I say, he's had a rough career. Dante Fowler Jr. has been released by the Falcons last week. He is a big name that has been a bust to date, relatively. So it won't be expensive because he's turning into Charles Harris, isn't he? He's struggling now he's run out of goodwill. He's bounced around the league a few times. He's struggled to land anywhere. So I think for the right price, there's someone like us would try maybe resurrect his career and get something out of him. You can put him on the edge, like say, probably one of them as a stand-up outside linebacker, but for the right price, I feel like we could potentially get something out of him. And I feel like there would be mutual interest there because he's running out of teams to try, and he's give it a few years and he could very well be out of the league. So he needs to try something drastic to resurrect his career. So he's someone cheap I'd be willing to take a punt on.
I think for me, there's a few guys at both kind of areas I'm looking at, because at the end of the day, the line between defensive end and outside linebacker is pretty small in this scheme. As we've seen, it's not quite interchangeable, but it's pretty close. So I kind of wanted to look at both. And one guy that's taken my eye a little bit is Doris Armstrong from the Cowboys. Now, former 4th round pick from a few years ago, who's now unrestricted. He has 5 sacks, 37 tackles, 12 quarterback hits last year, and should be available for pretty cheap. You know, the Cowboys don't have a need for him, and while they might have interest in re-signing him, they can't tender him or anything like that, so he's going to hit the market. I think that's someone that we could look at. There's a few really big names on the outside linebacker list, as you say. How much do we want to spend, though? I don't know. I mean, Devondre Campbell's going to get paid, isn't he? So it's not like we can afford someone like that. Nick Vigil, done okay with Minnesota. He's been all right. He played a full season this year with them. He's almost 29. He'll be 29 by the start of this season coming up. But maybe he could do a job for us. It's a priority for me in the draft. So I'll look at that. But maybe the one guy I would want to go for is Doris Armstrong.
Yeah, like I said, there is a good amount of talent out there if you do want to go. I think it's interesting. Ryan mentioned Dante Fowler. Obviously, we rescued Charles Harris from there last year. He had a bit of a resurgence here. Could Fowler do the same? Although he's going to he's going to command a lot more money than Harris did to start with. So that might be one of the big differences with those guys there. But yeah, I really want us to hit linebacker in the draft. So again, maybe one of those I'm looking there for. Debt Famine in the chat goes, I think this take upset Anthony. Not a big fan of Freeman, it seems. Freeman? Who am I? I don't know which one that is. I don't know. I never get upset. I just get over things. I have a lot of bad takes sometimes, so I have to deal with being wrong a lot of the time. Right, so who's next on the list? So next, now the one that we are going to look at. So we've got linebackers. Linebacker 1 and 2. Now, yeah, it is pretty obvious that we are going to need someone senior in there. Maybe, I know we said earlier, maybe we build them through the younger sphere here. But I mean, again, I'm not so keen here on the linebacker pool. When Jared Davis is the 3rd listed inside linebacker out in a free agency class, we know what Jared Davis is. I think there's going to be an issue or two there. Obviously, none of us are clamoring for him to come back, and whether it's a case of we're going to go through the draft and really build this thing up there. But I mean, is there anyone in this linebacker class, maybe a younger guy, someone who's been forgotten about, who we could find value with going forward? Because I mean, Quan Alexander is on there, but he's probably going to command a lot of money, and you will be putting some significant resources into him. Where are we thinking linebackers and free agency?
Oh, I'm going straight where you were just saying. Quan Alexander got paid $1.1 million from New Orleans last year and didn't set the world on fire, but the talent is still there. It's just his injury downside is a big risk. But the thing is, if we don't want to invest much, sometimes you've got to take a risk on those guys that might get injured, but might play really well if they don't. We did that this year with a couple of guys. It didn't work out for us. It didn't mean it wasn't the right decision. It just meant we got unlucky. And I think it's a avenue that we should pursue. So, Quan Alexander, team-friendly deal. I don't see him wanting much money. I really don't. I think that he is almost at bust territory now. So, I think you could pick him up on the cheap and be a good vet presence in that room.
Ryan, what are you thinking in terms of linebacker? It's a tough one, isn't it, with this class there, obviously. You don't want Jared Davis back, do you?
Oh, God, no. I think I would consider after the draft. I think I will address that spot who's left once we've picked in the draft. I think I will address it first where it needs to be and then see who's left. But I agree, Quan Alexander, he's had that rough season-ending injury in the last 18 months, so he's seen a bit of time on IR, so teams will be put off by him. But when he's healthy, he could be good value.
Yeah, I'd agree. If he's there for the right money, and again, he's a New Orleans guy, so maybe Campbell might not know him. They might not have intersected there, but I mean, there could be some links there. He might want to come up, but it depends on what he's asking. I guess again, you don't want to overpay for a guy who's got injury history, and that's why he took the cheap deal with New Orleans last year, because he was injured the year before. So obviously they got great value there with him. Defan Mangers, because Anthony walked off set when the news of Freeman being cut was brought up. I was just kidding. No, that wasn't you, Defan, man. I've just drunk a full can of cold brew, and I just needed to go and get rid of it, per se. So yeah, it wasn't anything to do with that. Just call of nature, as it was. Right, so we'll move that on. Linebackers out the way. Ooh, now this is becoming more of a discussion point for Lions fans here. Cornerback 1. Now, obviously, we've got a plethora of good young talent who has come through the draft, through undrafted free agency in specifics. I know that today Jerry Jacobs was classed as the #1 undrafted free agent of last year via PFF. He got the highest grade out of everybody. There's a lot to love about our young class there when it comes to the cornerbacks, but we do need a guy in there who has the experience as well. Or do we go in the draft again? Do we go big in free agency? There's a few guys around here this year. Obviously a lot of them are sort of the older guys on here, but obviously the standout in this class, JC Jackson from the Patriots. He's going to get paid an absolute darn fortune and is probably out of our range. One Justin Coleman from Miami is available if you're interested. But who on the corner? Yeah, agreed. But on the cornerback market, anyone striking out here, or do you just want to carry on building through the draft, or do you just want to carry on letting these rookies play, see how they can develop, and see whether there's any potential cornerback 1s or 2s in these guys who are going to step up next year?
I'm not. A lot of people have written off Jeff. I'm not one of them people yet. Like I say, he's going to have an interesting year. Like I say, we've seen him running now, so he's still got a few months. Like I say, so let's see what we can get out of him this year. But for me, I'm just happy to let these kids play in this year. Maybe draft a guy, but I don't really want to spend a lot of money. Like I say, we had the whole Dunbar debacle last year where he never arrived. We saw then the likes of bloody Nicole Roby Coleman and like Ballantyne. We spent a little bit of money. We brought in veteran guys. Did any of them pan out? Literally no one. Like I say, we've got a lot of cornerbacks on the roster. We've got guys that were on the practice squad that could activate it. So there's a deep pool to go with. I'm just going to ride it out for the time being. Like I say, I just want to see what we've got right now. I think I will address cornerback heavily in free agency next year. But for right now, I'm just going to roll this cash over and let's see what we've got in the second year, guys.
Do you agree, Matt? You willing to give the kids another year to play, see what the pecking order's like in 12 months? Or would you rather go in free agency and get someone to lead them, or try and find someone who can?
It's really hard, isn't it? Because the room has the potential to be one of the deepest that we have if everything works out, and the potential to be one of the weakest in the team if it doesn't. It's a real boom or bust room. If Jeff works out, and if Artie Melifonwu works out, and Jerry comes back fit, that's a great fundamental room right there. And then you got AJ Parker in the slot. Can he continue doing really well? You know, there's a lot of upside in that room. But, you know, those guys alongside Amani, they have all shown the ability to either be injured or be bad for long stretches of time, at least in the veterans among that group. And the young guys, can you rely on them yet to put up consistent seasons of being good? Like, no one would be surprised if Jerry and AJ maybe not step back, but kind of just stagnated a bit. I mean, these guys were undrafted for a reason, and, you know, maybe the market missed something. Hopefully they did. But I think it needs a vet in it. I'm not sure who. I'm looking through the list now, and I think that the area I'd like to target is slot. And I feel really bad for saying it, because I kind of want to hand it to AJ Parker, but I don't trust him yet. Like, he played badly in some patches, but showed flashes of being good. And maybe he just needs a vet for a year to kind of carry him through. And then in year 3, he can really take that role to be his own. But there's guys like Desmond King available who might be there for $2.5-3 million. I think you're investing much there, but you're getting one of the better nickelbacks in the league. So, I think there is options here to not invest too much in probably an upgrade. I think we would all agree that King is probably an upgrade over AJ Parker, without being unfair to AJ. But I think there's room for a veteran presence outside as well. Doesn't have to be someone pressing to start, but someone who's been there for 5 or 6 years, can take some of these younger guys under their wing and really kind of lead them, even if he's not the leader on the field, but the leader in the locker room, in that room.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's such a tough thing. It's such a tough position to really grade this year. I mean, I'm just going to straight out say I want Xavier Rhodes again. I asked for him last year. He's been a steady competitor for a long time now. He brings in that experience you want, and he plays really well. I was big on getting him last year to lead the young corners. He's available again. Maybe give him a year or two to come in and really give these guys a bump there. But again, it's really tough to decide what to do. Just quickly in the chat, Joey 2 times is here. He says, "What up, Doe? What up, Doe to you? Good, sir." Just chatting corner at the minute. Ken Stauder is in there. He says he'd like DJ Reed from Seattle, the cornerback there. He's 26, but he's about to get paid. I mean, if you want a cornerback 1, and obviously all these guys are going to slot in behind them, would you be happy to pay for a guy like him, a proven commodity, pay big, and then say, look, my corner room's done now. I've got this good young talent behind me. He's there to lead it. Is that something you'd be potentially happy with?
If you're paying him, you're not paying Armani, because isn't he due a payday next year? So yeah, if you're paying Reed, you're saying AO's got to go next year, and I'm still not sold on Armani. And I know people might hate that, but for me, you get a lot of good, you get a lot of bad too. Like you say, he blows a lot of coverages, he gets burnt a lot of the times, but he comes up with those cheap interceptions. He makes good plays, but also he gets gifts as well, which sometimes flatters him. He's a good cornerback too for me, but he'll never be a 1.
So would you be in on DJ Reed if the chance was there? Would you pay him well to come in, or do you feel like even with Okudah coming back, the young guys, we don't need to really pay big?
I don't want to, but if he's proven and he's an instant upgrade, like say, then maybe spend a lot of that cap, roll the rest over here.
What about you, Matt?
No, I think not. I think it's just going to come too rich. We've got so many options. I'm kind of, at least outside, I think I'm just hoping that someone does really step up between Okudah, Armani, Iffy, and Jacobs. I'm hoping for really good play from one of them. It could be Armani. I was so down on him, I wanted to cut him at the start of last year. He improved drastically. Now, he's still a liability in man coverage on crossing routes underneath. Like, he can't cover the speedy guys, and that's why he can't be a CB1, because he struggles with that play specifically. But he can be a good 2, like Ryan says, and he can get a lot better. There's room for him. I mean, you have a look at the coaching that he's been saddled with over the last 4 years, and you have a look at what people were saying in the off season last season, when Okudah came out and said, well, they were teaching me stuff I'd never heard of before. And it's like, what do you mean? You spent a year with Patricia and that defensive genius and his backroom staff. Why haven't they been teaching you the fundamentals of secondary play? So I think Armani still has a long way to grow. And with this coaching stuff, he could well get better. But he's a boom or bust guy for me, like this entire room. I think there's enough people in it that I'm hoping that one of them will make a step.
That word fundamentals still gets me even these years later. It's like post-traumatic stress disorder. You hear words and it reminds you of Patricia, and you don't want anything to do with it. So, more on the cornerback. Stepfan Man says the depth at CB is the deepest, but who is cornerback 1? Okudah, Armani, Iffy, Parker, Jacobs. Maybe Will Harris is in the cornerback room now. It's very tough, and Joey mentions it. He goes, our cornerback jobs are basically all up for grabs. They are all up for grabs, but on the flip side, we've potentially got the personnel to fill them all as well, I guess. So it's a question of, do you risk hoping that they fall into place and you can find like 3 or 4 of your main guys this year and then go next year, or do you solve it now? Do you draft again? Do you go in free agency again? That's the tough question with this cornerback group for me. Is, do you give them one more year, or do you put additional resources into a position we've put a lot into already now?
So here's a question for you both. Out of all of those guys he listed, who do you think has the highest ceiling? Because I got a very definite answer. I don't think it'll be the same as you two.
I've not
I'd
seen
like to say
enough.
Iffy.
I would, but I've not seen enough from him. I've seen him get better, and I think he could potentially be really, really good. But obviously the tape ain't there yet.
You both surprised me because Iffy was my pick too. I think Ifatu has the speed, has the length, and has the recognition skills. Like you say, not enough tape, but I'd like to see Iffy grow into the one. I think he could be.
Well, I know his problem, and we mentioned it when he came out of college, was when the ball got behind him. In front of him, he's incredibly good. It's when the ball gets in behind him he has issues. And I remember very clearly against Seattle, he got burnt by Metcalf for one that he didn't look behind. And it was, to be honest, it was a really good throw from Wilson. But later in that game, the same throw was made and he broke it up. You saw the recognition and you saw the improvement there on him in game. So I think potentially there's a lot to love there about him. And I do think he can become a cornerback one. He just needs a full healthy season. So I know that's why I said it, and probably Ryan thinks the same. So it's the trouble, isn't it? You're so much potential in that class. It's how much do you invest in it this year, through free agency or through the draft, or do you let it play out? I mean, I don't know. Even people in the chat don't really seem to know. It's everywhere. Joey 2 times goes, Amarnio is probably a lock to start. Akuda and Jacobs returning from injury. It's possible if he starts the season opposite Amarnio and AJ Parker in the slot. I mean, is that the starting group you go with? I mean, I guess if they're all healthy, who do you start next year out of this lot? Really? About you, Ryan, who would you start if this lot are healthy at corner?
Jerry, Armani, and it's a toss-up at the slot then, like you say. I'll roll with Iffy and Parker. I'll probably alternate them because just to get Mellifon on the field. I don't think there's any chance Akuda can be healthy for the start of the year. I'd be surprised.
Who about you, Matt? Who are you starting out the cornerbacks?
Yeah, I'm basically with Ryan. I'm at Armani and Parker, with Akuda possibly coming into it in the second half of the year, and then AJ Parker at the slot with Iffy getting snaps in both roles.
I think I'm with you too. I think I'd probably do the same, but you would hope Akuda can come back and work his way back into the team and build from there. I'm hoping the ideal situation is they just all push the hell out of one another. They make it so hard for Akuda to come back to get in that team that he has to show that first level talent we know of and push them even harder. And that's what you do. Det Fan Man comes up with the obvious one, which, well, it's not going to be Will Harris. Absolutely, it's not going to be Will Harris there. In terms of Reed, Ken Stouder says he played 79% of snaps last season. He was valued at 15.2 million via over the cap. Drafted in round 5, 2018. That seems like a lot of money for a corner with all the talent we've got there. I don't know. It's the question. I don't know what to do with it. I don't think I'm paying 15 million though for a cornerback with all that young talent in there. I think if it's going to be a proven guy, it's going to have to be. We're going to have to find a gem. We're going to have to do really well, and less than 10 will be the thing there. But let's move it on, because we could be going on this for a long time. Corner really is becoming a point of discussion now. Oh, right. And we're moving on to a position that isn't a point of discussion. Free safety. One. Obviously, the big guy here, Marcus Williams, out of New Orleans, projected to be paid about 16 million this year. I know the Lions are very interested in him. A lot of people have said they are. Dan Campbell knows him. I know we theoretically asked the question earlier, but who's buying him?
Knows.
Nope.
No.
No, he'd be a great fit. There's no doubt. If we signed him, he would play really well in this system. But you sign Marcus Williams, you can't re-sign Tracy or Harris. It comes at the cost of those two people. I don't like it.
No, I agree. I think the money is probably too rich there, but I mean, it's a shame we've not got a lot of free agent money this year. If you just threw the money at Walker and Williams and drafted Hamilton, now that would be a safety group. I'd love that, but I think that's far too rich for our taste this year. Is there anyone on that free safety list who you do think maybe you want to bring in? So obviously you've got, I mean, I've mentioned a few times you've got Marcus May from the Jets, but he's probably going to get paid maybe quite good as well. Don't even think about Tyrann Mathieu because he's just going to earn stupid money. You've got Anthony Harris from Philadelphia, LaMarcus Joyner from the Jets again. I mean, again, is there anyone in free agency you want to spend on outside of Williams? Or again, is this going to be a draft issue and look towards maybe a free agent safety next year?
I've seen a few people that are interested in Jabril Peppers. He's hitting the market. He plays that hybrid nickel. Yeah,
that's Wolverine bias. I will not have this on this podcast. There's enough of that on Luke's. All this. Anyone who's played for the Wolverines, Detroit, sign them.
Could be an elite returner as well, but it'd come down to money as well. Like I say, I feel like he'll probably want a decent payday. Even though for me, up to date, he's not lived up to it either. So I'm not interested in him.
Matt, anyone else? Maybe Marcus May, or would?
No, they're all too expensive for me, and it's a position that's really deep in the draft. So let's just draft them.
Yeah, agreed. Ken Dowder says that's OTC valuation, not I will pay. Yeah, I get that. OTC are usually reasonably odd on with the values they give for the contracts, and usually not too far off. They know what they're talking about in terms of valuation and that, but yeah, if you could get Reed for less, absolutely it would be a deal there. Just quickly before going, Debt Fan Man brought up the news we mentioned earlier, obviously 3 finalists to host the NFL draft. Green Bay, Washington and Detroit, he says. Book your hotels, tickets now, gents, that would be huge. Oh, don't worry, as Matt's already said, we're going to just hire out like a big house for the weekend and just come and party the hell out of it. So we'll be there, guys. Do not worry about that in the slightest. He says the announcement is in late March. That is true. Joey Two Times says, if we sign Marcus Williams, we really can't do anything without restructuring some contracts. Not worth it. Holmes is probably going to have to do some restructuring just to get Harris and Walker done. I mean, I don't think we need to do much restructuring, do we? I mean, obviously if you cut Trey, that's enough. I don't think you need to restructure guys to make money this year.
No, and we filled out the majority of our roster with these future deals, which means any contract you sign now after the first couple, you're saving about $900,000 on each man falling out of the conveyor belt of 53. So every deal you make is actually slightly cheaper than you think it is against the cap. And also, deals are naturally backloaded most of the time. I think there's plenty of room to sign quite a few people if you want to in this off-season. I just don't want to. Bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, we don't need to restructure. We don't need to push money into the future. We're not at a situation where we need to do that. You see Green Bay doing it, and because they have to. They want to win a Super Bowl with his team there. I mean, have you seen Bakhtiari's deal? He's going to cost them $32 million in 2 years' time. Trent Williams gets paid 22, I think. The sort of back deals they're doing are going to kill them in the long run, and we don't need that. And to be honest, I don't think we've really got many contracts. I think we've only got 5 guys over $9 million on contracts here. I think it's hard to make room for them, and we're going to be cutting one of them. Yeah. So anyhow, we'll move on to the last position because we have been going a little while, and then obviously we've got the free safety. We've got strong safety as well. We need guys at safety all round, and the top guy on this list, we all know him because Matt Patricia traded him away for a draft pick whom didn't even see the field for the Lions before we cut him. Quandre Diggs out of Seattle. Going to probably get paid really well despite the injury he suffered at the end of last year. You've got some other guys on there. You've got Kareem Jackson from the Broncos, but he's going to be 34. You've got Keanu Neal the 26-year-old from the Dallas Cowboys. I know I wanted him here last year before Dallas started buying up all the safeties that I wanted. I remember that very well. Then you got Daniel Sorensen from the Chiefs. You got Jerron Harmon. No, thank you. Don't want that. Again, I'm looking at this list of guys who are out there, and outside of Neal, if I can get Neal for 3 or 4 million, I'm bringing him here. But outside of that, I don't see the value. Do you guys agree, disagree?
I'm just going to draft a strong safety. Pulls deep. I like Jalen Petra. You've got likes of Yusuf Corker. You've got Nick Cross. I've seen some of those guys in Lions mocks. It's not a position I want to spend money on. And I definitely do not want to bring Quandre Diggs back. People just leave it alone. He left. He's gone. Like, he's an ex-girlfriend. Just don't keep going back there. Like, there's no need to. Like, I'm just not interested in bringing back old bodies anymore. Like, just let sleeping dogs lie.
I mean, we haven't replaced Quandre though. It's not someone that I want to bring back, but he's someone that I think would be very successful in this team. And we miss his leadership. The way he goes out in the field and is loud and proud and shows it. Like, the rest of his team rally around him as a reason why he's, quite beloved in Seattle. But OTC think that the average salary he'll get is $12.1 million next season. And it's like, okay, even if you adjust that for the injury and maybe he gets 10 or 11, it's his last big contract. He's 29. He might get 2 years, 24, or something like that, or 3 years, 35. We can't afford that. We just can't, not for someone like him when we're not in our window yet. Keanu Neal's much more realistic. There's also former Lion Tavon Wilson in this list. Not done a huge amount recently at San Francisco. But I quite liked him while he was here. I'd be much more on board with taking someone like Tavon Wilson at his price point of veteran minimum versus Diggs at 12, just because it's much more team friendly. I mean, I don't really want to do that either, but I think it's a better choice.
I think we have to do something though, didn't we? Because obviously we were never going to fix every position last year, but safety got neglected. Big time. Absolutely. And we have to do something this year. We all know our feelings on the first draft pick. That could help it a hell of a lot, but outside of that, you have to do something. But again, you don't want to get the wrong guy in free agency, so if you've got to take another whiff on it and wait another year, then maybe that's the way to go. So in regards to sort of the salary stuff again, Joey mentions we're down to 20 million already. That's true. We need 11 million for the rookies. I think that's also true when we're all said and done. And then we've only got 10 million left to carry for the roster for the season there. Obviously we've got Trey Flowers we can cut for 10 million, but I don't know. I'm still not on board with restructuring. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be like the Saints and the Packers who are kicking the cap. Because, as Ken mentions, Saints have just kicked 32 million down the line, and they seem to manage it, but they didn't even make the playoffs last year. And they've got all this money overhanging. They're going to lose good players again this year. Like, if they want to sign guys like Quan Alexander, they're going to have to cough up. I don't want to run an organisation where every year I'm worried about losing my best talent because I've kicked a can down the road for players I don't have. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to go down that road. I'd rather just spend within our means and not risk the future of the rebuild. Because next year, we've got a lot of money coming back to us. We just have to be patient.
Like I said, there are options out there. Like you say, we can get rid of Brockers if we want to save some money. Like I say, people I know don't want it, but we can get rid of Itai. Like I said, there is money to be made there if you want to pick someone up, if you think someone can play guard. So it's not like we need to restructure anyone if we want to make some difficult decisions. So there's money there if we want to make it, if we want a little bit of cap space. But no, I don't restructure anyone.
About you, Matt, I'm guessing, are you on board with us? No restructures if possible.
Oh, definitely not. We don't want to be pushing any money into the future. You push money into the future when your window is now and you're trying to fit more people onto your team. Our window isn't now, so we should be doing the exact opposite. We should be cutting where we can. We should be taking cheap deals where we can, trying to find our foundation for the future. And there really is no one available to restructure. I mean, what do you want to do? Amani Oruwari is a $2.6 million cap hit. this year going into free agency at the end of next year. Do you think you can re-sign him and lower his cap hit? Probably not at that level. There's only 4 guys above a $9.2 million cap hit. And you lose money at the moment with Romeo if you try and do anything with him because of the big deal he signed. Same with Decker and Goff. You can restructure him, but then you tie yourself to him. And I already tried to say I wanted to trade him. So, no, there's no one available worth it to restructure. No way.
No, I don't think so. And as Ken says, New Orleans, they've lost their head coach as well. He reckons they're still ahead of us, but when you're spending $270 million a year compared to us having $100 million last year with dead cap and players out injured, you're going to be slightly better. But they're in a position where they can't get a quarterback because they ain't got the money. They lost Breeze. They're letting all the good talent go. You wonder where all that money goes on that team, don't you? But of course, it's all the money they've kicked down the can. It just really impedes your ability to work going forward, and we don't need to do that. Joey says agreed. I think Holmes may possibly make a couple of minor restructures if he can, land a decent free agent, but I do not see Holmes going all in this off-season with expensive free agents at all. I agree. Maybe you might see some things like, what they did with Vaitai. $1 million here, $1 million there. Something simple to give us some money to work with in season, but outside of that, I don't think you want any more. Ken says Big V is the one contract that could use a change, but I don't know, man. I liked his play we got from him last year. I think he's great for Sewell. I think he's played pretty decently. And I think for what you're getting from him now, his contract is alright. I certainly don't want to kick the can on it, because this time next year, if you're still looking for that 5th guy on your offensive line, you can cut him vastly more cheaper than you can now. I think it's like $1 million it costs us to do it. It's nothing. So it's a problem you can look with further down the line. But I don't know. I don't think his contract should be touched, personally. Any of you guys?
No, I'm not touching his contract. I'm either keeping him or getting rid of him. I'm not messing the numbers around.
Yeah, I don't want to do anything with him at all. He still didn't perform to his cap number, but the difference between his first year and his second year was night and day. And if he can show similar improvement with another year of being healthy, never mind the fact that he can kick out to tackle if we need him to for injury purposes. Like, he could be the swing tackle we need as well as being the starting right guard, because we actually have quite good backup interior offensive linemen. So if he can be the swing tackle and the starting right guard, he provides pretty good value there if he can perform slightly better than he did last year. But I don't want to tie myself to him either. So he's perfect where he is right now.
Agreed. We're getting towards the end of the segment now, so if any of you in the chat, and thanks for all of you who have joined us this evening, it's been really good having you in it. If you've got any more questions, drop them in just as we start to wind this down a little bit. But just in terms of going back to the restructures, Joey says, we can restructure Goff, Ragnow, Decker and Vaitai, but I wouldn't. I'd agree. One, we don't want to restructure Goff because it ties you more than 1 year past him, and we absolutely don't want that, unless he proves something spectacular this year. Ragnow, I don't want to backload his deal's already pretty backloaded, is it not? If I'm not mistaken, Matt, him and Decker are both backloaded already, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we don't want to be in the case. We don't want Decker costing like top 2, top 3 tackle money in his last year, especially with him getting older. So you don't want to touch those. Don't touch Ragnow's. Mind you, Ragnow's got his deal, hasn't he? I keep thinking he's got the 5th year deal, but we've given him a long-term deal, haven't we? And then Vaitai.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't think there's any benefit there in restructuring the top guys. If you find some of the medium tier guys, but I remember looking down the list and I don't see anything that sticks out to me. Ken says, I like Big V, think it would be good to keep him for around 7 million per year. I mean, what is he at, 9 now? He's not much over that. And I think this 1 million he's had has dropped it a little bit further. I don't think he's much over. He's under 9, I believe, at the minute, so I don't think it's the worst deal in the world. Obviously, you'd like him for a little less, but
8.7.
8.7. So, he's in that area anyhow. So I don't think you need to mess with that. And Joey lines it up here. He says Holmes just needs to stay the course, keep building depth, and keep climbing out of cap purgatory. Agreed. I think this just needs to be another year where we need to trust the rookies to step up and play well, not make any stupid big moves in the free agency market, and keep the rebuild on track. That's why we did all the one-year deals last year, because now all those guys are potentially gone. It's not hurt the rebuild. We've got what we needed out of some of them. It did its job, and if we can find the same sort of guys this year, then go for it. But we've got another good draft class coming through. We've got a shed load of talented rookies. Let's use them and see what we can get out of them. In terms of the defensive free agency, or now free agency as a whole, I mean, you didn't do special teams really, did you? But I guess with special teams, we just want to bring them all back, and they are all restricted free agents pretty much. There's no...
Or exclusive rights, yeah.
I think I've got them all labelled up in green on this. I think that's restricted free agents for them all, apart from Fox. I think he's exclusive, isn't he? Or are they all exclusive?
Fox is exclusive. The long snap is exclusive because he was a UDFA last year, I think.
And then we've got Siebert and Rosas under contract, and we need to sort out with Patterson.
Yeah, Patterson's definitely exclusive rights, for sure.
Fair dues. So we're not making any changes there. Nothing you want to add in regards to those. Just in terms of free agency in general, we've done offense, defense. Anyone else want to make any comments in regards to anything that's gone by? Or have we wrapped it all up?
There's going to be big temptation here to spend. I spoke about earlier, people expect us to spend. And so there'll be lots of questions from the media about who we bringing in. And the fans aren't going to want to settle for not competing this year. There's going to be big pressure from inside and out to do the spending. And there are guys that they will be tempted to do it with. Marcus Williams, or the wide receiver from Tampa, Godwin. There will be guys out there who will command big deals that will be very attractive. And we must resist that temptation if we want to have future sustainable success. I want playoff appearance after playoff appearance, and you don't do it by making bad deals early in that stretch. We've made the very good decisions last year. We've shaken out some of the bad nuts. We are in a good cap position. We've got some really good guys who are young in this team. We just need to build from that. Don't get greedy early.
Co-signed by me. I don't think I could have put that any more poignantly than that. Ryan, neither. I think I agree. Free agency is a trap this year, especially for a team like us. Let's trust the rookies. Let's keep that spare cap in reserve in case we need it, and if we don't, let's roll it over. And this time in 12 months, we are going to be talking about, we're probably going to have some of the most free agency money of everybody. So we can really start talking about luxury picks as and when we get to it then. Ken just ends saying, he says the Big V contract is 8.7 million in 22. That's correct. And then it's 11.2 for 23 and 24. He says it's kind of expensive for a guy, but I guess if that's the case, in 12 months, if he has another really good year, that's when you look to restructure and move that down the line. Would you agree? I think that's when you look at doing that sort of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for this year, it's perfectly fine. And like you say, you could talk about restructuring him in 12 months, as and when, if you think he deserves it. So, yeah, we're going to see. A lot of interesting decisions to be made, but outside of Flowers, I don't really expect to see anyone else cut. And as these guys say here, I'm not sure we're going to see much in free agency. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up before we start to close this down in terms of Lions news? I did try looking through the news earlier. I think I covered everything, but if any of you in the comments have got out before we go, just quickly ask us your questions now and we will get them answered. But in terms of you two guys, much going?
Nope.
No, I mean, I'm just going to go back to my life. This has been a really, really nice distraction. Both my parents were diagnosed with COVID today, and I was meeting with them yesterday. So I'm in that new house, as Ant mentioned at the top. Our plumbing failed, so things weren't draining away. That had to be fixed today for an exorbitant fee. The washing machine was emptying its contents on the floor. It's been a real disaster today, so I'm just grateful that I can come here to my safe space and talk about something which somehow, and I think some fans will be surprised at this, that doesn't depress me. The Lions never depress me. I love I love this team. I love talking about them, and it's better than my life. So it's all good.
Oh, always love to end on a positive note there, don't we? I mean, we get asked so many times, why do we support the Lions? This is why. We love chatting Lions. This is the greatest fan bases out there, and there is so much to discuss, and, you know, we are on our way to a bright new future there. So just remains to go through our next episode. So in terms of us here on the main podcast, you will see us again in a week. That will be Monday, March the 7th. God, we are into March already. This year is flying by. Going to start combining a little bit of the main podcast and the college football podcast show. We will be looking at defensive line draft prospects, and we'll be doing a review of the combine, which is taking place this week. I think Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are slated to talk to the media tomorrow, if I remember rightly, in the afternoon. I think about 2 o'clock here. There's about half an hour between them, so we'll get to hear their first thoughts about the combine. As I say, we're going to go through the defensive line prospects there. Joey just says, good show, guys. Thanks ever so much, Joey. We appreciate every single one of you who is listening to us. The podcast last week, we reached just about 900 plays for the week. We only had 550 as our record before. You guys really are listening to us in such numbers now, and it's humbling, you know, that you would choose to spend your time with us few British guys on here in our sofas talking about the Lions. You know, it honestly does mean a hell of a lot to know that you're out there listening to us. So thanks very much for that. Charles says, stay young while we have the coaches to develop the talent. We may lose a few next year. Very good stream, guys. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, agree. Draft the young talent. Develop the young talent. Get some more in the draft this year. Get them to realise their full potential, because this coaching staff did that very much this year. And if they can do it again, we are going to have a really dangerous team in 12 months' time. And, you know, people are going to stop mocking us, and they are going to fear us. Det Fan Master says, thanks, fellas. Enjoy working through the podcast. You know, again, can't thank you enough for all the chatter that we are getting here. So yeah, the next podcast for the main one is in a week. The college football podcast, I need to sit down and have a chat with Ryan about what we're going to do, but we will be back in due course for you. We're going to start doing tape reviews and breakdowns of the classes for the draft, so just keep an eye out for the announcements for those. I've got my first one ready to go. I was meant to do it yesterday but wasn't able to, but we will get to doing some tape watching. You can come with us on YouTube, look through the tapes. We just show you all raw, unfiltered, the good plays, the bad plays, and we can have a discussion about the players themselves. Just remains for me to go through all our socials. Obviously you can find us all over the internet. So on YouTube, Roar of the Lions UK, Twitch, ROTL_UK. If you still haven't watched us through there, if you've got a spare sub available, please do send that our way. We are now affiliate status on there again. Thank you to everybody who does follow us. We appreciate it ever so much. On Facebook, you can find our page, Roar of the Lions UK, our Facebook group, Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide. Twitter, you can find us at ROTL_UK. Instagram, same ROTL_UK. Website, www.roarofthelionsuk.com. Go on there to read all our divisive articles, whether it be Matt talking about trading Goff or Ash talking about drafting a safety second overall in the draft. You can find plenty of things on there to wet your whistle as far as that goes. But for now, that just remains for me to thank Ryan McCluskey. It remains for me to... Ken goes, when does the scouting combine start? Started today. The drills take place on Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The players have started arriving today. It was quarterbacks and running backs. Tomorrow it's wide receivers, tight ends, and then it's defense over the next 2 days. But the actual footage itself takes place Thursday to Sunday. A lot of players opting out. Evan Neal's opted out. Stingley's opted out. Corral's opted out. So, going to be interesting. Some guys are going to be able to shine and move themselves up the rank there. And obviously Detfan mentions Kenny Pickett's hand size. That's tomorrow, I believe, the measurements for the quarterbacks get done. So the big question about how big his hands are will be answered tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, as I say, thanks very much to you, Matt. Thanks very much to you, Ryan. And we shall see you again very soon here on the Roar of the Lions UK podcast. Until then, just remains for me to say, one pride.
One pride.
One pride.